Welcome, dear listeners, to another journey into the shadows, where bridges become thresholds, stories become whispers, and the veil between the living and the lost grows thin. Tonight, we cross 25 haunted spans across California, some quiet, some sinister, and listen for the echoes of tragedies long past. May their voices find you. The Colorado Street Bridge in Pasadena, California, is a stunning piece of early 20th century architecture. With its elegant Beaux-Arts design and sweeping arches that stretch across the Arroyo Mico, the bridge has long been admired for its beauty. Built in 1913, it was once celebrated as a symbol of progress and engineering achievement. A proud link connecting Pasadena to Los Angeles, but behind its graceful facade lies a grim and haunting history, one that earned it the chilling nickname, the Suicide Bridge. From the very beginning, the Colorado Street Bridge drew attention for both its height and its view, standing more than 150 feet above the Arroyo Seco. It offered breathtaking panoramas of the San Gabriel Mountains and the valley below. However, that same height would later become the source of its darkest reputation. The first recorded suicide from the bridge occurred just a few years after its completion. As the decades passed, the numbers would tragically climb, and by the time of the Great Depression, the bridge had become a magnet for despair. The 1930s were especially grim. The United States was in the throes of economic collapse, and Pasadena, like much of the country, was hit hard. Men and women who had lost everything found themselves drawn to the bridge, viewing its great height as a final escape from the crushing weight of poverty and hopelessness. The city tried to fight back against the stigma, but the legend had already taken hold. Newspapers reported the deaths with grim regularity, and ghost stories began to swirl around the structure. According to those who lived nearby, the bridge is haunted by the restless spirits of those who jumped. On foggy nights, drivers have reported seeing ghostly figures wandering along the railings, pale shapes that vanish when approached. Some have claimed to see a woman in a flowing white gown standing at the edge, as though preparing to leap, only to disappear into thin air. Construction workers repairing the bridge have spoken of eerie whispers and cold spots, even on warm Pasadena evenings. It's said that one particular spirit, that of a man who leaped while clutching a child, still lingers near the center of the bridge, mourning his final, desperate act. That tragic story has been told for decades. During the Great Depression, a father reportedly took his young daughter to the bridge, overcome by financial despair. He leaped with her in his arms. Miraculously, the child survived, landing in a thick patch of trees below, but the father died instantly. Locals say the cries of a man and a child can sometimes be heard echoing through the canyon on quiet nights, a reminder of the sorrow that once unfolded there. Over the years, Pasadena officials took measures to make the bridge safer. High fencing was installed along the sides, and security patrols were increased. Even after restoration efforts in the late 20th century turned it into a historic landmark, the shadow of its past continued to loom large. In the 1990s, the bridge underwent a $27 million renovation to strengthen its structure and preserve its classic design. Yet, despite the physical improvements, the emotional scars remained. The hauntings have become part of Pasadena's folklore, drawing paranormal investigators, photographers, and curious tourists from all over the country. Some come to admire the bridge's architecture, its sweeping lamps and grand arches, while others come searching for the supernatural. Ghost hunters have recorded strange electromagnetic readings, unexplained footsteps, and chilling cold spots on the bridge at night. A few have even reported hearing faint cries, or seeing flickering lights under the arches where victims once fell. One particularly eerie legend involves a woman in a long cloak who appears suddenly in the middle of the roadway, forcing drivers to swerve or stop. When they look again, she's gone. Others tell of phantom footsteps echoing behind them as they walk across the bridge, only to find no one there. Locals who live near the Arroyo Seco claim to hear murmurs or sobs drifting up from the darkness below, sounds that vanish the moment they are acknowledged. For Pasadena residents, the bridge stands as both a historic treasure and a somber reminder of human fragility. The city has taken further steps in recent years to address its legacy, adding new barriers and offering mental health resources to those in crisis. Still, the nickname Suicide Bridge endures, passed down through generations, a haunting echo of what has taken place there for more than a century. Some say that the bridge holds the sadness of those who perished upon it, that the very concrete and steel absorbed their despair. The arches that once symbolized progress now seem to whisper of loss. At sunset, when the sky turns gold and pink over the San Gabriel Mountains, the bridge looks serene, even peaceful. But when darkness falls and the wind rustles through the eucalyptus trees, an unmistakable heaviness settles over the canyon. The lights of passing cars flicker through the mist, casting long shadows against the stone walls. And for those who pause to look, it's easy to imagine that the shadows themselves are moving. To this day, the Colorado Street Bridge remains one of Pasadena's most recognizable landmarks. It has appeared in films, on postcards, and in countless photographs. Yet to many, it's more than just a bridge. It's a place steeped in sorrow, beauty, and legend. Every year, despite the safety measures, some still come to the bridge seeking an end. Volunteers and police officers patrol the area, often intervening in time, saving lives that might otherwise have been lost to history. Those who visit at night often describe an overwhelming sense of melancholy, as if the air itself carries memories of the past. Some say that when the wind is just right, you can hear faint whispers, not words exactly, but a collective sigh of those who stood there before. The Colorado Street Bridge may have been built to connect 2 points across the Arroyo Seco, but in the minds of many, it connects the living with the dead, the beautiful with the tragic, and the past with the present. The bridge to Drawbridge, California, sits quietly in the marshes of the southern San Francisco Bay, a rusting, decaying relic that seems frozen between two worlds. Once a bustling hub for hunters, fishermen, and railroad men, the area now lies abandoned and half swallowed by the encroaching wetlands. All that remains are the skeletal remains of the town's buildings, their wooden frames tilting into the mud, and the ghostly outline of the railroad bridge that once connected Drawbridge to the outside world. Today, few dare to approach it after dark. Those who do often return with stories that blur the line between history and haunting. Drawbridge began as a simple stop along the South Pacific Coast Railroad in the late 1800s. The town was named for its 2 small drawbridges, which allowed trains to pass through while letting boats navigate the waterways of the Don Edwards. San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge. In its heyday, Drawbridge was a lively community. Hunters would come for the abundant ducks and geese, while fishermen filled their nets in the surrounding sloughs. Small cabins and lodges sprang up, and the sound of train whistles echoed across the water as steam engines thundered through on their way between San Jose and Alameda. But as the years passed, the wetlands began to reclaim the land, and the town slowly sank into ruin. By the 1970s, Drawbridge was a ghost town, its last residents forced to leave as rising tides. Saltwater intrusion and neglect took their toll. The drawbridges themselves, once symbols of movement and connection, became symbols of isolation. The larger of the two, now known locally as the Drawbridge Ghost Town Bridge, remains partially intact, jutting out into the marsh like a forgotten memory. Its rails are twisted, its supports half submerged in brackish water. To most, it's nothing more than a crumbling structure in a forbidden landscape. But to others, it's something far stranger. Over the decades, locals have reported eerie happenings near the old bridge. On foggy nights, when the wind sweeps in from the bay, people claim to hear the sound of a distant train, not from the modern tracks miles away, but from the direction of Drawbridge itself. The whistle is faint, almost mournful, as though calling out from another time. Those who follow the sound find nothing but silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of water and the rustle of reeds. Some say it's the ghost of the old passenger train that once ran through town, forever traveling a route that no longer exists. Even stranger are the stories of phantom lights. Witnesses have described seeing lanterns swinging between the old ties, glowing softly in the mist. The lights move slowly, as if carried by unseen hands, pacing the ghostly rhythm of a worker walking the tracks. Sometimes they vanish abruptly, other times they drift off toward the horizon, swallowed by fog. Park rangers who patrol the wildlife refuge have occasionally caught glimpses of these mysterious orbs, dismissing them as tricks of the light or reflections on the water. Yet, those who've seen them up close insist they move with purpose, like the lanterns of long-dead trainmen, still tending their line. Local legend tells of one such worker, a bridge tender named Samuel Reeves. In the early 1900s, Samuel was responsible for operating the drawbridge, ensuring that trains and boats could pass safely. One stormy night, as heavy rain battered the bay, a miscommunication between two train conductors led to disaster. Reeves, unable to close the bridge in time, watched helplessly as an oncoming freight train plunged into the dark water below. Dozens perished, their bodies never recovered from the shifting marsh. Consumed by guilt, Reeves was said to have disappeared days later, his lantern found swinging gently from the bridge's control lever. Ever since, his spirit is rumored to haunt the area, still walking the tracks, reliving that fateful night. Hikers and wildlife photographers who have ventured close to Drawbridge claim to have felt sudden drops in temperature, even on warm days. Some have heard whispers carried on the wind, faint voices calling out names that no one recognizes. Sam, they sometimes hear, or Lydia, James, or Captain. The names change, but the tone is always the same, distant, mournful, pleading. A few have even reported hearing the metallic groan of the bridge's mechanism, long since rusted solid, moving as though it were still in operation. When they look, the bridge remains still, lifeless, but the echo lingers in the air. Despite its eerie reputation, Drawbridge has become a source of fascination for urban explorers and ghost hunters. The challenge of reaching it, trekking across muddy trails, avoiding the rising tides, and sneaking through restricted areas only adds to its mystique. But those who make the journey often describe an unsettling feeling upon arrival. The silence is overwhelming. The only sounds are the cries of distant seabirds and the occasional splash of unseen creatures in the marsh. Then, almost without warning, a faint vibration can be felt beneath the feet, as if the earth itself remembers the rumble of passing trains. Many visitors have tried to capture photographic proof of the supernatural. Some return with strange images, faint silhouettes on the bridge, misty figures where no one stood, or glowing streaks that defy explanation. A few have even claimed to hear a voice whispering from nowhere, warning them to leave while you can. Whether these are tricks of the mind or genuine echoes of the past, the effect is the same, a deep, lingering sense that the bridge is alive with memory. In recent years, environmental changes have further eroded what remains of Drawbridge. The marshland continues to rise, swallowing more of the old town and its bridge each year. Soon, it may vanish entirely beneath the water, taking its secrets with it. But for now, on certain nights, when the fog rolls in thick and the air grows still, locals say you can still hear the whistle long, low, and filled with sorrow, drifting across the bay. They say it's Samuel Reeves, guiding his ghostly train through the darkness. The passengers of time forever aboard. There are those who believe that places remember, that human emotion, tragedy, and love can imprint themselves onto the land. If that's true, then the Drawbridge Ghost Town Bridge remembers everything. The laughter of the hunters who once gathered there, the rumble of passing locomotives, the screams of a doomed train, and the endless solitude that followed. The bridge stands as a silent witness to all of it, suspended between the living and the lost. The Dog Bar Bridge, spanning the Bear River along the Placer-Nevada County border in California, seems like an ordinary crossing at first glance. Surrounded by pine forests and granite outcroppings, it carries travelers over calm, green waters that shimmer beneath the sun. But when darkness settles and the wind moves through the trees, the air changes, the quiet grows heavy, and the sound of distant howling drifts across the water, soft, mournful, and strange. The people who live nearby know the sound well. They call it the Dog Bar Bridge Howl, and they say it belongs to no living creature. The story goes back to the mid-1800s. During the height of California's gold rush, the Bear River area was bustling with miners, loggers, and settlers chasing dreams of fortune. Among them was a prospector named Thomas Baines, a quiet man who kept mostly to himself. He lived in a small cabin near what would later become Dog Bar, accompanied only by his loyal dog, a large, scruffy shepherd mix named Brutus. Locals often saw the pair walking along the river, the man with a shovel slung over his shoulder, the dog trotting faithfully beside him. They were inseparable, and though Baines rarely spoke to anyone, his dog's friendly bark was known throughout the nearby camps. According to local legend, one night in 1852, after weeks of heavy rain, Baines headed out to check the riverbanks for signs of gold washed loose by the floodwaters. The river was swollen and fast, its surface churning with foam and debris. Brutus followed close behind, whining as they neared the rickety wooden bridge that spanned the Bear River, a primitive structure that had been hastily built by miners. Baines stepped onto the slick boards despite the storm's fury. Moments later, the bridge gave way. Witnesses at a nearby camp reported hearing a man's shout, followed by the frantic barking of a dog. The prospector was swept beneath the raging current, never to be seen again. For days afterward, searchers combed the riverbanks. They found no trace of Baines, but they found Brutus. The dog sat at the edge of the river, where the bridge had collapsed, refusing to move. Rain soaked his fur, and the wind tore through the valley. But the animal stayed, staring at the spot where his master had vanished. Locals tried to coax him away with food and shelter, but he growled and refused to leave. Day after day, night after night, he kept his vigil, howling at dusk, his cries echoing across the canyon. Some said it sounded like grief itself. When they finally found him weeks later, Brutus was lying still beside the riverbank, his head resting on his paws, his body cold. He had died waiting for his master. It wasn't long before strange things began to happen around the site. Travelers crossing the rebuilt bridge after dark reported hearing a dog's howl carried on the wind, long, low, and filled with sorrow. Others spoke of hearing the sound of claws scraping against the bridge's wooden planks, as though something unseen were pacing alongside their footsteps. Yet when they turned their lanterns toward the noise, there was nothing there. Over time, the story of the loyal prospector's dog spread throughout the region. Locals began calling the crossing Dog Bar Bridge in honor of the faithful animal, and the name stuck. As years passed, the old wooden bridge was replaced by sturdier versions, culminating in the modern structure that stands today. Yet, despite the changes, the hauntings continued. Campers along the river have reported being awakened in the middle of the night by the distant, echoing howl. Fishermen have felt an unseen presence watching them from the brush. Some even claim to have heard soft panting just behind them, as if an invisible dog were standing guard. Those who have lived near the river long enough tell other, more unsettling stories. On certain moonlit nights, when the water runs calm and silver, witnesses have seen a faint figure walking along the banks, a man carrying a shovel, followed by a dark shape moving on four legs. The man walks slowly, stops to look toward the bridge, then disappears into the mist. Others have seen glowing eyes beneath the structure, reflecting light like an animal's. Yet when they shine flashlights toward them, there's nothing but empty air and rippling water. Skeptics dismiss the tales as folklore, born from the eerie acoustics of the canyon and the cries of coyotes that roam the woods. But those who've experienced the phenomenon insist there's something more. They describe the howl as unlike any natural sound, deeper, sadder, and filled with an emotion that feels almost human. Some say it's not just a dog's spirit that lingers, but the prospector's as well. Perhaps Baines, in death, returned to find his faithful companion, and now both haunt the place where they were torn apart. There's an old belief in the foothills that dogs guard the boundary between the living and the dead, that their loyalty binds them even beyond the grave. At Dog Bar Bridge, that idea feels painfully real. Those who drive across late at night sometimes find their headlights flickering or their radios crackling with static as they reach the center. The wind grows still, and then from somewhere unseen comes the sound of a howl. It rises softly at first, then swells into a long, aching wail that echoes through the trees and fades into silence. The moment it ends, The air feels heavier, as though something unseen has passed by. Hikers who linger near the river say that, at dawn, faint paw prints sometimes appear in the damp earth, circling the same patch of ground near the bridge's foundation. They never lead away, they simply stop. A few locals leave treats or small tokens there, out of respect. One old fisherman claims that every time he drops a bit of bread or jerky into the river for Brutus, the wind seems to calm, and the water runs smoother. He's still there, the man says quietly, still guarding the place. Today, Dog Bar Bridge is a peaceful spot by daylight. Families picnic along the banks, kayakers glide through the water, and children skip stones without a care. But when the sun dips below the horizon and shadows stretch long across the river, the place feels different. The woods grow silent, the breeze turns cool, and the water takes on an almost glassy stillness. Then, if you listen closely, you might hear it, a distant, lonely howl carried through the canyon. It echoes once, twice, then fades away into the night. Deep in the heart of California's Anza-Borrego Desert, where the mountains twist and crumble into sun-baked canyons, stands a marvel of human engineering and endurance. The Goat Canyon Trestle. It stretches like a ribcage across the arid landscape, its wooden beams bleached by nearly a century of relentless sun and sand. Built in the early 1930s to bridge a remote gap in the Carrizo Gorge, the trestle remains one of the largest wooden structures in the world. But beneath its grandeur lies a history soaked in hardship, loss, and legend. To this day, those who make the difficult hike to see it often return with unsettling tales of ghostly hammering, phantom voices, and unseen presences that linger among its timbers. The story of the Goat Canyon Trestle begins with the San Diego and Arizona Railway, a line once hailed as the Impossible Railroad. Its construction cut through some of the harshest terrain in Southern California: steep cliffs, unstable rock, and blazing desert heat. When a powerful earthquake in 1932 destroyed part of a tunnel in the Carrizo Gorge, engineers were forced to devise a new solution. The answer was the trestle, a massive wooden bridge that would span Goat Canyon and allow trains to pass once more. The task was monumental. The summer temperatures routinely climbed past 110 degrees, and the canyon floor lay miles from the nearest road. Every plank, beam, and nail had to be hauled in by hand, mule, or small rail car. It was dangerous work from the start. The canyon walls were steep, the winds fierce, and the heat merciless. Workers labored from dawn until dusk, building the trestle piece by piece, often hundreds of feet above the desert floor. The structure, when completed, would stand nearly 200 feet tall and stretch over 600 feet in length, a wooden giant against the barren hills. But the cost was high. Several men lost their lives during construction, falling from scaffolds or succumbing to heat exhaustion under the punishing sun. Others were injured when materials slipped, ropes snapped, or supports shifted unexpectedly. Their names were never formally recorded in the company's ledgers, just accidents, lost to time and sand. Locals who live near the edge of Anza-Borrego have long whispered that the trestle is haunted by those who perished building it. They say that when twilight falls and the desert air cools, strange sounds drift through the canyon: the rhythmic clang of hammers, the creak of wood under unseen weight, the faint murmur of men speaking in Spanish, English, and even Italian, the languages of the immigrant workers who once toiled there. The voices echo as if carried from another century, fading in and out with the desert wind. Hikers who camp near the site have reported waking at night to the sound of footsteps crunching on gravel, followed by the sudden rattle of nails or the metallic clang of a rail car. Yet no one is ever seen. One of the earliest recorded ghost stories from the trestle dates back to the 1940s. A railway inspector claimed that, while walking the line near Goat Canyon at dusk, he heard hammering ahead of him, sharp, steady blows echoing off the canyon walls. Assuming it was a repair crew, he called out but received no answer. When he turned the bend, the noise stopped. The trestle stood empty, bathed in red sunset light. As he stepped onto the wooden planks, the hammering resumed, this time directly beneath him. He froze, listening as invisible hands seemed to drive nails into the beams below. The inspector fled, later telling colleagues that he would never cross the trestle alone again. Other travelers have reported similar encounters. Some speak of a phantom foreman, a tall man in an old-fashioned hat who appears briefly on the bridge before vanishing into thin air. Others have seen flickering lantern lights along the structure at night, moving as though carried by workers long gone. A few have described a low chant or song drifting up from the canyon, sung in a language they can't identify. Even during daylight, hikers say there's a heaviness in the air around the trestle, a feeling that something unseen is watching from the shadows of the cliffs. The desolation of the place only adds to its eerie power. The hike to Goat Canyon Trestle is long and grueling, winding through miles of scorched desert and collapsed tunnels. The silence there is immense. Every sound, a rustle of wind, a shifting rock, seems amplified by the canyon's natural acoustics. When hikers finally arrive, the trestle looms before them like a wooden cathedral, its beams creaking softly in the breeze. Many describe an immediate sense of awe, followed by unease, as if the structure itself is alive, breathing with the ghosts of those who built it. In 1953, a freight train derailed near the trestle, killing several crewmen and injuring others. The wreckage was cleared, but afterward, workers sent to repair the line began reporting strange phenomena. Tools went missing, only to reappear in impossible places. Rail ties shifted overnight, and more than one worker swore they saw figures moving along the trestle at night, silhouettes holding lanterns, walking silently, their faces obscured by shadow. When called to, they never responded. Eventually, the line was closed permanently, and the desert began reclaiming the rails. But the stories didn't fade, they multiplied. Modern visitors sometimes record unexplained sounds near the bridge. In one case, a group of hikers left a recording device overnight beneath the trestle. When they retrieved it, they heard what sounded like the rhythmic pounding of hammers, faint voices, and, at one point, a man shouting a command in Spanish, "Más rápido," faster. There was no one else for miles. Park rangers who've investigated these reports usually chalk them up to acoustics, wind, or echoes from far-off canyons. Yet the sounds persist, repeating themselves in the same rhythm, the same places, as though an invisible work crew still labors to finish a project that never truly ended. Even those who don't believe in ghosts admit there's something uncanny about the Goat Canyon Trestle. The desert has a way of holding on to history, preserving not just bones and ruins, but emotions, the fear, pain, and determination of those who came before. The trestle stands as a testament to that. Its massive wooden frame, still defying gravity after all these years, is both a monument to human achievement and a memorial to those who gave their lives in its creation. When the sun sets over the Anza-Borrego Desert and shadows stretch long across the sand, the trestle glows in the fading light, its beams burning gold before fading into black. Then, as night deepens, the silence returns, until somewhere in the darkness, the faint tap of a hammer rings out once more, echoing through the canyon. Fernbridge, known as the Queen of Bridges, stands proudly over the Eel River in Humboldt County, California. With its sweeping concrete arches and weathered beauty, it has endured floods, earthquakes, and the relentless flow of time since its completion in 1911. To most, it's a testament to early 20th century engineering, an elegant, unassuming relic of California's past. But for locals, especially those familiar with the stories of the Waihoot tribe, Fernbridge is more than a bridge. It's a threshold, a place guarded by a spirit, said to dwell beneath the waters of the Eel River, watching every traveler who crosses above. The Waihoot people have lived along the Eel River for countless generations, long before settlers and surveyors arrived with their maps and ambitions. To them, the river was a living force, unpredictable and sacred. It nourished the land but demanded respect. Their elders told stories of a powerful water spirit who ruled the currents, neither benevolent nor cruel, but deeply just. This spirit, sometimes called Watala in whispers, was said to appear when the river grew angry or when someone approached its waters with ill intent. Watala could calm the waves for those with pure hearts, but could just as easily summon whirlpools or floods to punish the arrogant. When Fernbridge was built across this river, The old stories said that the spirit did not vanish. It merely shifted its domain, moving beneath the concrete arches, continuing its eternal watch. The construction of Fernbridge was a massive undertaking for its time. Built entirely of reinforced concrete, it stretched over 1,300 feet across the Eel River, the longest such bridge in the world, when it was completed. The builders faced fierce weather, soft riverbanks, and unpredictable floods. There were moments when workers thought the structure would never hold. Old accounts from 1910 describe how sudden surges of the river would sweep away equipment overnight, forcing the crew to start again. Some workers swore they heard strange murmurs in the rushing water, voices that seemed to warn or taunt them. One foreman, according to local rumor, even insisted that a presence was at work, deciding when the river would rise or calm. When Fernbridge finally opened in 1911, townsfolk in nearby Ferndale celebrated with pride, but a few of the older Wyatt observers stood quietly by the river's edge, saying prayers of respect, acknowledging the spirit beneath. In the century since, Fernbridge has been tested again and again, and survived. The Eel River is notorious for flooding, sometimes swelling from a trickle into a roaring, tree-laden torrent in just hours. During the devastating floods of 1955, 1964, and again in 1986, the waters rose high enough to submerge the bridge's arches. Every other structure along the river was destroyed, homes, barns, even entire stretches of road, yet Fernbridge remained standing. Locals began to say the bridge was blessed. Others said it was protected by something older and unseen. Some of the Wyatt elders quietly remarked that Wyatt Tella had judged the bridge worthy, allowing it to endure where others fell. Travelers crossing Fernbridge at dusk sometimes speak of a feeling that comes over them, a quiet pressure, as though the air thickens mid-span. A few have described hearing faint splashing sounds, even when the river runs low, or glimpsing ripples that move against the current. Others claim to have seen a shimmer beneath the water, something large and fluid, glowing faintly blue, vanishing the moment it's noticed. Truckers who cross late at night often report their headlights dimming slightly as they approach the center, then brightening again on the far side. Locals say that's the spirit watching, deciding who passes unharmed. Over the decades, strange events have added weight to the legend. In 1964, during one of the worst floods in California's history, the Eel River raged higher than ever recorded. Massive trees crashed against Fernbridges, pillars, and towns all along the coast were swallowed by water. Yet eyewitnesses in Ferndale swore they saw a calm patch form directly beneath the bridge, a section of stillness amid the chaos. One man claimed he saw a shape rise briefly from that calm water, a figure that seemed both human and serpentine, its surface glimmering like fish scales, before slipping silently back below. When the flood finally receded, Fernbridge still stood, battered, but intact. Engineers credited its construction, others credited something else. The Wyatt people maintain that Waitela has always guarded the crossing, not out of affection for the bridge itself, but for the balance it represents. To cross the Eel River safely, they say, one must carry respect for the water, for the land, and for the lives that have passed through it. Those who mock the river, throw trash from the bridge, or speak carelessly of its spirits, are sometimes met with warnings. Tourists have reported sudden gusts of wind, so strong they nearly lose their footing, or objects slipping from their hands into the river below. A local fisherman once told of feeling a tug on his line, so powerful it snapped clean, followed by the distinct sound of a woman's voice whispering his name from beneath the bridge. Even modern paranormal investigators have taken an interest. Recordings made near the riverbank have picked up unexplained low-frequency hums, rhythmic like breathing, rising and falling with the current. Cameras occasionally malfunction when aimed at the water's surface. One group captured what appeared to be a faint, translucent form under the bridge, impossible to identify, but unmistakably human-shaped. Whether artifact or apparition, no one could say. Despite these stories, Fernbridge continues to serve the people of Humboldt County faithfully, just as it has for over a century. It's a daily passage for farmers, travelers, and locals commuting between Ferndale and the greater Eel River Valley. Yet even the most practical drivers sometimes admit that they slow down as they cross, glancing at the river below. There's a feeling of reverence, almost instinctive, that accompanies the crossing. Some even offer a quiet nod or a whispered thank you, not to the bridge, but to the guardian said to dwell beneath it. At sunset, when the light turns golden and the Eel River mirrors the sky, Fernbridge looks almost ethereal. Its arches cast long reflections across the water, forming perfect circles that seem to pulse gently with the current. In that light, it's easy to imagine the stories are true, that something ancient stirs beneath, watching patiently, deciding who is worthy of safe passage. The Wyatt's say that Watala still moves through the river at twilight, unseen but ever present, a spirit of balance and judgment. Bree Canyon Road Bridge, hidden among the rugged hills of Diamond Bar, California, seems ordinary at first glance. The asphalt winds through steep embankments, its narrow curves cutting sharply between canyons of dry earth and tangled brush. Drivers know the road for its danger, a stretch that demands focus, especially at night. But locals know it for something else entirely. They say that once the sun sets and the mist begins to crawl over the canyon walls, the bridge becomes a threshold, a place where the living and the dead share the same narrow lane for a few fleeting moments. For decades, the Bree Canyon Road Bridge has carried its sinister reputation. The structure itself, isn't grand, just a small crossing over a dry ravine, but its placement, deep in the curves and shadows of the canyon, makes it unnerving even to seasoned drivers. Long before Diamond Bar became a bustling, suburban city, this road was little more than a dirt track connecting remote ranches and mining outposts. It twisted dangerously, with steep drops and blind corners. Horses once stumbled here, wagons overturned, and later, when cars arrived, drivers found the bends treacherous. The earliest recorded crash dates back to the 1930s, when a delivery truck lost control on the curve, plunging into the ravine below. The driver's body was never recovered. Since then, accidents have become almost routine, cars skidding out of control, headlights vanishing mid-turn, leaving only twisted metal and questions behind. Locals began to talk about strange occurrences around the bridge, stories that started as whispers and evolved into warnings. The most common legend speaks of a phantom hitchhiker. Drivers traveling alone late at night sometimes see a woman standing by the roadside, just before the bridge's darkest curve. She wears a light-colored dress, her head slightly bowed, her hair hanging over her face. Some say she raises her arm as if asking for help. Those who stop claim she climbs into the back seat without a word, her reflection invisible in the mirror. Then, as the car crosses the bridge, the air turns icy cold, and when the driver looks again, the seat is empty. Her story changes with each telling. Some say she was a young bride killed on her wedding night. Others a traveler stranded decades ago, struck by a speeding car that never stopped. What never changes is where she appears, always by the bridge, always at that same haunted curve. Another legend involves the flickering headlights. Drivers have reported seeing a pair of bright lights appear suddenly behind them, following closely as they approach the bridge. The lights keep pace, drawing nearer and nearer until they vanish without a trace midway across. Sometimes, the driver pulls over, expecting another vehicle to pass, but the road remains empty, silent except for the wind whispering through the canyon grass. A few claim that these phantom lights belong to the ghost of a motorcyclist who died here in the 1960s after losing control during a late-night ride. His bike, they say, was found mangled at the bottom of the ravine, its headlamp still faintly glowing, even after the battery had supposedly died. Residents of Diamond Bar, who grew up hearing these stories, have their own first-hand experiences. One man, a retired sheriff's deputy, once told of responding to a late-night crash in the early 1980s. He arrived at the scene to find a car upside down near the bridge, its engine still smoking. Inside, no driver, only the faint smell of perfume and the impression of a handprint on the windshield from the inside. She claimed she de-swerved to avoid hitting someone who suddenly appeared in the middle of the road, a woman in white. When she stopped the car to check, there was no one there. She just looked at me, and I lost control. Paranormal investigators have since visited the bridge, armed with cameras and EMF detectors. Some report spikes in energy readings near the railings. Others capture strange audio, faint whispers, a soft female hum, even the echo of footsteps on gravel when no one is walking. One group claimed to record a full apparition on video, a pale figure drifting across the bridge's midpoint before dissolving into the darkness. The footage remains inconclusive, but the fear it evokes is unmistakable. Even locals who dismiss ghosts can't deny the atmosphere of the place. The canyon absorbs sound in unsettling ways. Car engines echo oddly, as if something unseen mimics the noise a second later. The temperature drops without warning, and sometimes fog rolls in so thick it hides the road entirely. Drivers talk about how their radios lose signal right at the bridge, and how cell phones often die there, only to return to normal once they've driven another mile. It's as if the air itself swallows light and sound, keeping secrets that can't be explained. Some believe the energy comes from the land itself. Before Diamond Bar's suburban sprawl, this area belonged to the Tongva people, who considered the canyons sacred. Tribal stories spoke of spirit trails, paths where the souls of the dead traveled between worlds. It's said that building over such places disturbs the balance, allowing restless energies to wander. Over time, the pain, confusion, and fear of those final moments linger like an invisible fog, replaying again and again. There's even a tale that ties the two legends together. According to one account, in 1978, a young couple driving home from a dance stopped to pick up a woman standing near the bridge. She didn't speak, but smiled faintly as she got in. When they asked where she was headed, she simply pointed toward the other side of the canyon. As they crossed, the headlights of an oncoming car appeared, blindingly bright. The driver swerved to avoid it, only to realize the other car had vanished. When he turned to speak to their passenger, she was gone. Later, shaken, he went to the police to report what happened. They told him about others who'd seen the same woman, always on foggy nights, always by the bridge. Today, Bree Canyon Road Bridge remains active, a shortcut for commuters and late-night travelers. During daylight, it looks harmless, a simple overpass surrounded by eucalyptus trees and dusty hillsides. But when night falls, the tone shifts. The shadows stretch long, headlights blur in the mist, and that uneasy silence returns. Those who know the legends drive a little slower, gripping the wheel just a bit tighter as they approach the curve. Some even whisper a quick prayer, glancing into their mirrors for signs of flickering lights or a pale figure by the roadside. The Santa Margarita River Bridge in Fallbrook, California, is quiet now, a simple crossing over a gentle stream that winds through dense oak groves and rolling hills. But when the wind moves through the canyon and the water churns after rain, it carries whispers of stories older than the town itself. Stories of the gold rush, of tragedy and disappearance, of laughter that once echoed under moonlit skies, and screams that followed. For locals, the bridge isn't just a relic of the past, it's a haunted scar, where history and haunting seem forever intertwined. Long before Fallbrook became a quiet countryside community, this stretch of land was part of a rough wagon route linking the coast to the mountains. In the mid-1800s, travelers searching for fortune crossed the Santa Margarita River on their way to the goldfields. The journey was perilous, the river unpredictable. In summer, it was a shallow stream. In winter, it became a violent torrent, fed by rains from the nearby mountains. One night, as the story goes, a wagon train camped near where the bridge stands today. The travelers were weary, families, miners, even a preacher, their wagons heavy with supplies. They made camp close to the water, unaware that a storm was building upstream. By midnight, thunder shook the canyon. The storm moved fast, and the river swelled without warning. Some managed to flee, but others were caught as the water rose over the banks. The wagons were swept away, their lanterns extinguished beneath the muddy current. When dawn came, nothing remained but broken wood and scattered belongings along the shore. Searchers later found fragments of the wagons miles downstream, but not a single body. According to local lore, on stormy nights, travelers still hear wagon wheels creaking in the dark, and horses snorting in panic before being drowned out by rushing water. Those who walked the bridge in heavy rain claimed to hear voices calling for help from below. Faint but desperate, rising and fading like the current itself. Decades passed, and the gold rush faded into history, but the land never lost its uneasy air. In the 1920s, a new road was built, and a small concrete bridge spanned the river where the old crossing once was. Locals began using it as a shortcut between towns, though many avoided it at night. Strange occurrences became common, headlights flickering, engines stalling, and an inexplicable chill settling over the bridge even in summer heat. Some swore they saw shadowy figures standing on the banks, watching silently as cars passed by. Then came the story that turned the bridge from rumor to legend. In the spring of 1959, a group of Fallbrook High School students celebrated prom night. After the dance, several couples drove out toward the river, seeking a quiet place to park, to talk, to watch the moonlight shimmer on the water. Only one car returned, the others vanished. Search parties scoured the area for days, finding nothing but tire marks near the edge of the bridge and one single shoe caught in the mud. For weeks, the community speculated. Some said the group must have fallen victim to a sudden flood. Others believed foul play was involved. But no evidence surfaced, and no bodies were ever recovered. Not long after, stories began to circulate of ghostly prom-goers wandering near the bridge. Drivers late at night would see a young woman in a formal gown standing by the roadside, drenched and pale, her corsage wilted and eyes hollow. When they stopped to help, she vanished. Others claimed to see faint lights, like paper lanterns or headlights, gliding just above the water before disappearing into the fog. The legend grew that the missing teens still roam the bridge, caught in an endless night, reliving the last moments of their youth before being swallowed by the river. In the years that followed, the Santa Margarita River Bridge became a rite of passage for local thrill-seekers. Teenagers dared each other to visit at midnight, to honk their horns 3 times, or to walk the length of the bridge without turning back. Some said that if you stood still long enough, you'd hear faint music, the echo of a 1950s love song, drifting through the trees. Others described a sudden drop in temperature and the feeling of unseen eyes following them. One story from the late 1970s tells of a couple who stopped on the bridge to take photographs. When they developed the film, a pale figure appeared standing behind them in the frame, a young man in a tuxedo, smiling faintly, though no one had been there when the picture was taken. The couple, shaken, later learned the description matched one of the boys who'd vanished decades before. Paranormal investigators later tested the area and claimed to record low-frequency sounds, faint laughter, then a scream, followed by static. Skeptics dismissed it as wind interference. But those who've stood on that bridge know the difference between wind and a whisper. There's also the tale of the drowned lights. Truckers passing through the area report that at certain times of night, headlights appear beneath the bridge, glowing under the water as if cars are still trapped below the surface. The lights move slowly, bobbing up and down, before fading into darkness. Divers have searched the riverbed multiple times over the years and found nothing. Yet, the lights continue to appear, sometimes blue, sometimes white, always just out of reach. Old-timers in Fallbrook tie the hauntings to the land itself. The Santa Margarita River runs through what was once native territory, and legends from the Lusico people speak of spirits who guard the waters. They believed the river was a living being, capable of anger, vengeance, and sorrow. Some elders say the floods and disappearances were not accidents, but warnings, the river taking back what was taken from it. When settlers built the bridge, they disturbed something ancient, and ever since, the boundary between the living and the dead has thinned there. Today, the bridge still stands, weathered but strong, its concrete worn smooth by decades of rain and wind. By day, it looks peaceful. Hikers and photographers come for the beauty, the quiet, the soft sound of the river below. But when night falls, that calm shifts. The trees seem to lean closer, the air thickens, and the river's murmur deepens into something that sounds almost like a voice. Locals say that if you drive across slowly, with your windows down, you might hear it, the echo of wagon wheels in the distance, or a faint waltz melody carried on the wind. Some hear crying, others laughter. A few even claim to see figures on the banks, illuminated by the moon, dripping wet, holding hands, still dressed for a dance that ended long ago. Dogwood Road, stretching through the quiet outskirts of El Centro, California, is an ordinary rural highway by day. But when night falls, the road changes, the air turns still, the fields fade into shadows, and the bridge along Dogwood Road, known to locals as Ghost Girl Bridge, becomes the setting of one of Imperial Valley's most chilling legends. For decades, stories have circulated about a young girl who died tragically on that very stretch of asphalt. Some call her the Dogwood Ghost, others simply the Girl in White. Her name has long been lost to time, but her story endures, whispered among truckers, late-night travelers, and teenagers daring each other to drive the road after midnight. It began, as many ghost stories do, with an accident. The earliest version dates back to the 1950s, when Dogwood Road was still a narrow two-lane route, surrounded by farmland and irrigation canals. One night, after a local dance, a young girl was said to be walking home when a driver, blinded by fog and poor headlights, struck her near the bridge. He stopped, terrified and shaken, but when he stepped out, she was gone. No body was found. Only a white shoe and a single ribbon lay on the roadside, damp with dew. The driver reported the incident to the sheriff, but searches the next day turned up nothing. Locals said the girl's family never came forward, perhaps because she was from a nearby town, or perhaps because her spirit never left the road long enough to be claimed. Other accounts tell a different version. Some say she was a passenger in a car that lost control, crashing into the ditch near the bridge. The car overturned, killing her instantly, while her friends survived. In their grief, they began visiting the site, leaving flowers and lighting candles. But over time, they claimed to see her, standing by the road in her prom dress, smiling faintly in the moonlight, as if waiting for them to take her home. Whichever story is true, one thing remains constant: the sightings. Drivers traveling along Dogwood Road at night often describe the same scene. A young girl appears on the shoulder, just before the bridge, small, pale, wearing a flowing white dress that glows faintly in the headlights. Sometimes she raises a hand, signaling for help. Other times she simply stands, looking toward the approaching car. Those who stop say she speaks softly, asking for a ride to a home in El Centro, or to a nearby neighborhood that doesn't exist anymore. Her voice is calm, even kind. Many who've encountered her describe an overwhelming sense of sadness, as if she's aware she doesn't belong to this world. Those who give her a ride remember the details vividly. She climbs quietly into the back seat, never making eye contact, her dress slightly wet, her hair hanging loose, as though she's just stepped out of the rain. As the driver talks, she remains silent, or offers only brief answers, directions that make no sense, or fragments of sentences that trail into whispers. The car fills with a chill that no heater can fix. And then, at some point along the drive, often near the bridge itself, she disappears. No sound, no door opening, no fading footsteps. Just a sudden, unbearable cold. When drivers look in the rearview mirror, the back seat is empty. Some claim to see a faint mist where she sat. Others say they hear a sigh, like a breath leaving the car. The phenomenon has been reported for decades. Truckers making long-haul trips through the valley mention glimpsing her figure on foggy nights. Locals tell of near accidents when they swerved to avoid hitting what they thought was a person, only for the figure to vanish in their headlights. Police officers responding to calls about a girl on the road. In time, the legend grew into a ritual. Teenagers dared each other to drive the road alone after midnight, park on the bridge, and wait. Some claimed they heard tapping on the rear window, as if someone outside was asking to come in. Others said that if you left the passenger seat open and drove slowly, the air beside you would turn icy, a sign that she'd accepted your silent offer of a ride. One boy in the late 1990s recounted how his car radio flickered to life on its own while parked there, playing a faint waltz tune before shutting off again. When he looked up, he swore he saw a girl's reflection in his side mirror. though no one was behind him. Locals soon began calling it Ghost Girl Bridge. Even those who didn't believe in ghosts avoided it after dark, claiming the road seemed to shift the bridge, appearing closer or farther than it should, the headlights dimming for no reason. One woman reported her engine dying completely while crossing it. When she stepped out to check under the hood, she felt a sudden, sharp tug on her sleeve, like a child's hand trying to get her attention. She looked around, but no one was there. Moments later, her car started again, without explanation. Over the years, paranormal investigators have visited Dogwood Road with cameras and voice recorders. Some captured unexplained cold spots and strange electromagnetic spikes near the bridge's center. Others recorded faint audio, a single word whispered in the dark, "Home still." No one has ever identified who the ghost girl might have been. Public records list no specific fatal crash that matches the legend exactly. It's as though she exists only in the retelling, a collective echo of all the lives lost on that dangerous stretch of road. There's also a belief among local elders that the spirit is not lost, but protective. They say that drivers who see her are being warned that her appearance prevents accidents rather than causes them. A few survivors of near-fatal crashes swear they saw her seconds before losing control. A white figure in the headlights that made them brake just in time. Whether she's a warning or a wandering soul, she always vanishes the same way, quietly, leaving nothing but a drop in temperature and an unshakable feeling of sorrow. Today, the Dogwood Road Bridge still stands, though it has been reinforced and modernized. Cars rush past it daily, most unaware of its dark legend. But at night, when the desert wind moves through the canals and the moon hangs low over the fields, that stretch of road feels timeless. Drivers who pass alone sometimes lower their windows, half expecting to hear footsteps on gravel or to glimpse a girl's reflection just outside their headlights. The Colorado Street Bridge in Pasadena, California, stands as one of the most haunting landmarks in the state, a place where beauty and darkness exist in unsettling harmony. By day, it's a masterpiece of early 20th century engineering. Its graceful arches spanning the Arroyo Seco like something from a romantic painting. But by night, those same arches seem to twist under the weight of the stories they've carried for more than a century. Beneath the quiet hum of passing cars lies an atmosphere thick with whispers, unseen presences, and sorrow that refuses to fade. When the bridge was completed in 1913, it was hailed as a marvel, the tallest concrete arch bridge in the world at the time. But not long after it opened, the deaths began. The Great Depression hit Pasadena hard, and despair crept through the city like a fog. One by one, people began leaping from the bridge's 150-foot drop into the ravine below. Police reports from the 1930s describe scenes of broken lanterns, abandoned coats, and letters left neatly on the railing. Yet some who visited the site afterward swore that they heard voices soft, persuasive, almost comforting, calling them closer to the edge. Even today, visitors describe hearing those same faint murmurs. "Come here. It's not so bad. You'll feel free." The voices are said to sound calm, coaxing, even loving, but their intent is chillingly clear. Those who walk beneath the bridge, in the tangle of trails and trees along the Arroyo Seco, tell different tales. The air beneath the arches is unnaturally cold, even in the height of summer. The echo of footsteps often follows visitors, though no one is visible. A whisper is said to drift through the stillness, repeating one phrase again and again. It's her fault. Some claim it comes from a man's voice, others from a woman's. The legend behind it changes depending on who you ask. One version tells of a woman who, in the depths of despair, leaped from the bridge after throwing her infant child over the side, a desperate act of madness and guilt. Her spirit, they say, still wanders beneath the bridge, whispering blame and sorrow into the dark. Another version insists that it's the husband's spirit, doomed to repeat his final accusation for eternity, never able to forgive. Reports of ghostly mothers are among the bridge's most terrifying accounts. Park rangers and joggers have described seeing women in early 20th century clothing standing silently on the bridge, cradling something in their arms. When approached, they vanish, sometimes leaving behind only the sound of a crying baby echoing faintly from the ravine. One witness, a Pasadena resident, walking her dog near the base of the bridge in the 1980s, claimed she heard splashing in the shallow creek below, followed by the unmistakable wail of an infant. When she rushed toward the sound, there was nothing, no child, no ripples in the water, only silence and the feeling that someone was watching her from above. The bridge's haunting energy seems to affect not just individuals, but the air itself. Paranormal investigators describe it as one of the thinnest places in California, a point where the boundary between life and death wears dangerously thin. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, recordings capture faint voices pleading for help, sometimes begging for another chance. One psychic who visited the site claimed she sensed dozens of presences along the arches, not just the spirits of the dead, but something older, darker, feeding on the sorrow left behind. She described it as a hunger that grows each time someone falls. Perhaps the most unnerving tales come from those who crossed a bridge at night and felt unseen hands tug at their sleeves or brush against their arms. Some say it feels like someone trying to catch their attention. Others describe it as a desperate grip, as if a lost soul is asking for help in crossing not the bridge itself, but something far beyond it. One man, in 2004, recounted stopping his car halfway across after feeling his steering wheel jerk sharply to the right. When he looked through the passenger window, he thought he saw a woman's hand pressed against the glass, pale, shaking, and gone in an instant. Another driver reported that his headlights briefly illuminated a figure standing on the railing, a man in old-fashioned clothes who seemed solid until he turned and disappeared into the air. Beneath the bridge, the stories grow darker. The Arroyo Secos underpass has become a gathering place for those seeking the paranormal. But even seasoned investigators rarely stay long. Strange lights drift between the arches, sometimes pulsing like slow heartbeats. Disembodied voices call out names, often the very names of the people who are there. Some report the distinct sound of footsteps pacing just behind them, accompanied by a cold wind that rises from nowhere. Once, a police officer patrolling the area at night claimed to see a figure standing at the very edge of the bridge, preparing to jump. He shouted and ran forward, but as his flashlight hit the figure, it simply vanished. Moments later, he heard a faint laugh echoing from below. It's not just ghosts of the past who seem to inhabit the bridge. There are signs of something residual, a kind of echo of despair that lingers. People who visit often describe an overwhelming heaviness as soon as they step onto the bridge, a pressure in the chest, a sudden sadness that has no explanation. Psychologists might call it suggestibility, the mind's reaction to knowing the site's history, but others believe it as something else entirely. The energy of countless lost souls pressing against a veil, yearning for peace that never came. Local legend even holds that the bridge calls to certain people. Residents claim that suicides often occur in waves, as if the bridge itself hungers for attention. There have been reports of people with no previous history of depression suddenly feeling compelled to visit, drawn there by dreams, visions, or inexplicable impulses. One woman told friends she couldn't stop thinking about the bridge. She drove there one night and never came back. Some Pasadena locals refuse to even drive across it, taking detours just to avoid the pull they feel in their gut when they near the arches. In 1993, barriers were added to prevent further tragedies, and today, tall chain-link fences line the walkway. Yet even that hasn't stopped the strange activity. Some say the spirits resent the barriers, that their frustration can be felt in the rattling of the metal on still nights. Others believe the ghosts are grateful, their endless cycle of loss finally broken by steel and wire. But the bridge still hums with energy, still carries the weight of its past. Tourists who visit after dark claim to see silhouettes walking along the railings, shadows that move even when no one is there. Hidden deep in the rugged wilderness of the San Gabriel Mountains lies one of California's most haunting relics of human ambition, the Bridge to Nowhere. It stands as an elegant concrete arch, rising unexpectedly out of the wilderness, connecting nothing to nowhere. Built in the early 1930s, It was once meant to be a proud link across the San Gabriel River, part of a grand plan to connect the mountain communities by road. But fate and nature had other ideas. Before the bridge ever saw a steady stream of traffic, powerful flash floods tore through the canyon, wiping out the roads on either side. The bridge, miraculously, survived. But everything around it vanished. Now, it stands alone, unreachable by car, accessible only by foot through a grueling trail, enshrouded by the whispers of its own ghostly legacy. From a distance, the bridge to nowhere looks strangely out of place. Its massive concrete arch standing tall against cliffs and pine trees, a man-made ghost in a wild landscape. Those who hike to it often describe a sense of awe that quickly gives way to unease. The air feels heavier near the bridge, as though it remembers what the world around it has forgotten. There's an unsettling silence in the canyon. No hum of traffic, no city noise, only the occasional rush of wind and the faint murmur of the river below. Many hikers claim that once they set foot on the bridge, the sounds of the world seem to fade away entirely, replaced by an almost electric stillness, as if time itself pauses there. The story of the bridge's birth begins with promise. During the Great Depression, engineers and construction crews worked tirelessly to carve a new road through the San Gabriel Mountains, hoping to link the San Gabriel Valley with Wrightwood. It was a project of progress, a symbol of perseverance during hard times. Workers poured their hearts into the massive concrete structure, unaware that within a few years, nature would reclaim what they had built. In 1938, a catastrophic flood, one of the worst in California's history, roared through the canyon. Entire sections of road were ripped away, bridges and culverts destroyed. The bridge to nowhere was left stranded, its connection to civilization erased overnight. For decades, it sat abandoned, unreachable, forgotten except by wildlife and the occasional explorer. But with isolation came stories, strange stories. Hikers began reporting odd experiences as they trekked the canyon trails. Some spoke of hearing voices, faint, disembodied, calling from below the bridge. Others swore they saw figures standing on the railing, only for them to vanish when approached. There were whispers of phantom construction workers, seen in the mist, still walking the site, inspecting a bridge that no longer served its purpose. One tale tells of a worker who fell into the river during construction, swept away before anyone could save him. His body was never recovered. Since then, hikers claim that during high winds, a lone echoing call can be heard beneath the arch, a voice shouting for help that never comes. But not all the stories are tied to the bridge's construction. Over the years, the isolated spot has drawn all kinds of visitors, thrill seekers, campers, wanderers, and those searching for something beyond adventure. Some never came back. There have been reports of disappearances in the canyon, hikers who set out toward the bridge and were never seen again. Rangers have warned of flash floods that can rise in minutes, sweeping through the narrow ravines with deadly force. Yet others claim the danger feels different. There are those who say the bridge itself chooses who reaches it safely. One local legend insists that if the canyon doesn't want you there, it will make sure you don't arrive through missteps, lost trails, or sudden storms. At night, when the mountains turn black and the moonlight glimmers off the river, the bridge to nowhere becomes something else entirely. Adventurers who have camped nearby speak of strange lights appearing on the span, soft orbs drifting above the railing, then plunging silently into the canyon below. Some say these lights resemble lanterns, reminiscent of those used by the 1930s workers. Others believe they are the souls of those who lost their lives to the floods, forever searching for the road that once led home. One camper claimed he woke to find footprints circling his tent, barefoot, human-sized prints pressed into the cold sand, leading toward the bridge, but not away from it. The bridge's haunting extends beyond the physical. Many who visit describe an emotional weight settling over them as they cross. Sadness, isolation, even longing, as if the bridge remembers what it once was. Some hikers have reported vivid dreams after returning home, seeing the bridge submerged under dark water or hearing the roar of floods outside their windows. One woman wrote that she felt watched the entire hike, and when she looked back from the trail's edge, she saw what she swore was a man standing alone on the bridge, pale still, and staring directly at her through the twilight. Modern-day visitors might find it strange that such a place feels so charged, given its peaceful surroundings. But there is something about the bridge to nowhere that defies logic. A structure meant to connect, left forever isolated. Psychics who have visited claim that the bridge acts as a conduit, amplifying the emotions of those who cross it. They say it collects echoes, laughter, sorrow, fear, and plays them back as whispers in the wind. On still days, some visitors have recorded faint voices carried through the canyon, fragments of conversation, laughter, even the distant sound of tools striking concrete, as though construction continues on some unseen level of time. Yet, despite its eerie reputation, the bridge to nowhere endures. It's become a popular destination for hikers and bungee jumpers who stand on its edge and leap, not into despair, but into thrill and exhilaration. Ironically, the same structure once associated with tragedy and abandonment now attracts those seeking freedom. But even they admit that, before jumping, the air feels different, tense, almost alive. Some describe the sensation of unseen eyes watching from the cliffs, or a sudden chill just before they leap, as if the canyon itself remembers. There's one final story that locals still tell, one that lingers in the minds of those who visit after dark. Years ago, a pair of hikers decided to camp beneath the bridge. Around midnight, they heard the sound of footsteps above them, slow, deliberate, pacing the bridge's length. When they called out, the steps stopped. Then, from the darkness above, came the faint clink of metal, like tools being dropped, one by one, onto concrete. They climbed up to investigate, but the bridge was empty. Yet when they looked down into the riverbed below, they saw ripples spreading across the water, as though something or someone had just walked through it. Rising above the verdant slopes of Santa Barbara County, the Cold Spring Canyon Arch Bridge is a marvel of engineering and a monument to California's rugged beauty. Spanning the deep canyon carved by Cold Spring Creek, it connects the sides of the winding State Route 154, offering breathtaking views of the Santa Ynez Mountains. By day, it is admired for its graceful steel arch and the sweeping panorama it offers of forests, cliffs, and distant valleys. But as night falls, or when the morning fog rolls in from the Pacific, the bridge takes on a more ominous character. Known among locals as a site of numerous tragic falls and suicides, the arch has long been a magnet for whispered stories, unexplained sightings, and lingering spirits said to watch the valley below. Constructed in 1963, the Cold Spring Canyon Arch Bridge was hailed as an engineering triumph, one of the highest bridges in California, standing nearly 400 feet above the canyon floor. Its steel structure gleams in the sun, but from below, the shadows under the arch appear almost cavernous, giving the impression that the valley itself is holding secrets. Tragically, the height and isolation of the bridge have made it the site of countless deaths over the decades. Early newspaper reports document accidents involving both vehicles and pedestrians, though the most chilling stories concern those who leaped from the railing intentionally. Locals whisper that the bridge carries more than structural weight. They speak of a strange atmosphere that descends with fog or overcast. Skies a palpable stillness that presses against the chest, chilling the skin even in summer. Those who drive across alone, especially after dark, often report sudden unease, a feeling that they are being observed. Some describe fleeting shapes moving along the walkway, shadows that vanish when approached, or a soft whisper drifting from the railing, almost audible over the sound of the wind. The stories of the spirits begin with the unfortunate souls who fell from the bridge. Witnesses claim that, on foggy nights, faint lights can be seen along the railing, sometimes resembling someone standing, sometimes like a lantern swaying in the mist. Drivers report that these figures vanish when headlights get too close, leaving nothing but the lingering sense of being watched. Some hikers near the canyon floor describe hearing faint footsteps above them, echoing across the steel structure, though the roadway is empty. Occasionally, the sound of a muffled cry or a whisper of a name carries down the canyon, chilling those below with the idea that someone is still trapped in the space between the arch and the sky. One of the most persistent legends tells of a mother who lost her child near the bridge decades ago. Locals say she appeared to several drivers and pedestrians during foggy mornings, cradling a small, indistinct figure in her arms. Those who reported seeing her describe her as silent and pale, her eyes filled with grief, standing at the edge of the bridge, as though guarding the lost child. When approached, she vanishes, leaving only a sudden drop in temperature and an unshakable feeling of sorrow. Others claim to have heard her voice calling their names, softly urging them to watch the valley, or asking, "Will you help me?" Some accounts focus on the phenomenon of ghostly passengers. Drivers alone on the bridge sometimes report a sudden cold draft in the car, or the fleeting impression of a hand resting on the back of the seat. One man claimed he saw a pale figure in a white dress crouched near the railing as he approached, only to find the area empty moments later. The presence, he said, was heavy with grief, almost pleading for acknowledgement. Paranormal enthusiasts have speculated that these are residual energies, echoes of tragic moments that repeat endlessly in the place where life was lost. The valley below the bridge seems to amplify the haunting. The echoing acoustics of the canyon carries sounds for miles, and the stillness of the remote forested slopes enhances the sensation of being alone yet observed. Hikers have reported hearing footsteps trailing them along narrow trails, only to turn and see no one. Others speak of voices whispering indistinct warnings, or the feeling of unseen eyes following them as they look up toward the bridge. One experienced photographer camping nearby claimed to have captured a faint silhouette in a long exposure shot. A figure standing on the edge of the arch, just barely visible in the morning mist, though he had been alone the entire night. Despite its grim reputation, the Cold Spring Canyon Arch Bridge continues to draw visitors. Its dramatic height and scenic vistas are irresistible to photographers, hikers, and thrill seekers. Yet many approach with trepidation, aware of the stories they have heard. Park rangers and locals advise caution, particularly during early morning fog or after heavy rains, when the bridge can be treacherous and the atmosphere seems especially charged. Some say that respect and quiet observation are the best ways to avoid disturbing the lingering spirits. Others insist that the bridge chooses whom it reveals itself to, offering glimpses of those who have passed, but only for a moment. There are even reports of more tangible phenomena. Vehicles have stalled unexpectedly on the bridge with no mechanical explanation, and car radios sometimes flicker or emit static when approaching the arch. Hikers and photographers describe sudden gusts of wind or a chill that descends rapidly, brushing against their faces like an invisible presence. Some claim to hear soft crying or the sound of someone struggling to call for help, always fading before they can respond. Many who experience these events describe an overwhelming mix of awe and fear, a feeling that they are sharing space with something beyond understanding. The bridge's haunting seems to persist across generations. Those who have lost loved ones to suicide or accidents in the region sometimes report dreams of the arch, or visions of figures standing on the edge, as if seeking closure. Others feel an inexplicable pull toward the site, as though the spirits are inviting them to acknowledge the pain they carry. And for some, crossing the bridge becomes a silent ritual, a place to reflect, to remember, and to sense the presence of lives that were abruptly ended too soon. Nestled in the redwood groves of Santa Cruz County, the Felton-covered bridge stands as a quiet relic of a bygone era. Constructed in the 19th century, this wooden span was once a vital crossing over the San Lorenzo River, connecting small logging communities and providing access to the heart of the redwoods. Its weathered timbers and moss-covered shingles give it the appearance of a bridge that has grown from the forest itself. By day, visitors are drawn to its rustic charm, photographing the intricate trusses and the sunlight filtering through the surrounding canopy. But when fog rolls in from the mountains, the bridge transforms into something far more mysterious, a locus of ghostly whispers, delicate footsteps, and fleeting glimpses of figures that vanish before they can be identified. The bridge's reputation as a haunted site has been cultivated over decades, passed down through local lore and repeated encounters. Long before Felton became known for its redwood attractions, settlers and loggers spoke of unusual phenomena on the bridge. They told stories of workers who would cross late in the evening and hear soft creaking of wood underfoot, even when the bridge was empty. Others reported seeing movement through the fog, the vague outline of a person walking or standing in the center, sometimes dressed in the clothing of an earlier century. These apparitions were never threatening, but they carried an air of melancholy, as though the bridge itself remembered the lives that had passed over it. Visitors to the bridge today often speak of the same experiences. The fog that frequently settles in the valley creates an ethereal atmosphere, reducing visibility and amplifying sound. On such mornings, people claim to hear footsteps pacing across the wooden planks behind them, delicate and measured. Yet, when they turn, the bridge is empty. Sometimes there is the faint rustle of fabric, like a dress or coat brushing against itself, with no wind to explain it. These sounds are subtle, easily dismissed, but persistent enough to send a chill down the spine. Hikers who pause on the bridge to take photographs have reported sudden temperature drops, a coldness that seems concentrated in the center of the span, where the mist is thickest. Among the most famous tales is that of a young woman in a white dress. Visitors say she sometimes appears near the middle of the bridge, standing silently, her face obscured by the fog. Those who approach describe an overwhelming sense of sorrow, a weight in the air that seems to press against the chest. When they call her name or step closer, she disappears into the mist, leaving only the faint sound of footsteps retreating into the fog. Some accounts suggest she is searching for someone, repeating the routine endlessly, caught between worlds. Others believe she represents a lost soul from the logging days, a worker or traveler who met a tragic fate on or near the bridge. Not all encounters are visual. Many focus on sound and sensation. The floorboards creak unexpectedly underfoot, even when the bridge is empty. Hikers walking along the planks report feeling as if someone is walking alongside them, keeping pace. Objects left on the bridge, such as hats or scarves, have been found shifted or slightly displaced after visitors return from a short walk. At times, the atmosphere is so charged that people instinctively hurry across, sensing unseen eyes tracking their movement. Paranormal investigators have recorded faint audio patterns, murmurs, soft footsteps, and low humming that seem to resonate from within the timbers themselves, though no source can be determined. Historical research sheds some light on the bridge's lingering spirits. Built in the late 1800s to facilitate logging and transport in the redwood forests, the structure has endured decades of storms, floods, and rebuilding. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, accidents were not uncommon. Workers fell from scaffolding or slipped on the wet timbers, and travelers on horseback occasionally plunged into the river below. While official records are sparse, oral histories mention several deaths connected to the bridge, some tragic, some sudden. Locals believe that these events left an imprint, that the bridge absorbed the sorrow and anxiety of those who perished or were near it, echoing it for those who later cross its span. The fog plays a key role in the bridge's mystique. In the early morning, mist often clings to the river below, rising like a pale curtain that obscures the far end. This natural veil has led many to glimpse shapes moving within it, figures that appear to step forward and retreat simultaneously, shifting between perception and invisibility. Photographs taken in these conditions sometimes show hazy shapes or faint, human-like outlines, though skeptics argue they are merely tricks of light and shadow. Yet countless eyewitness accounts describe interactions that feel tangible. The brief contact of a breeze that seems to emanate from an unseen figure, the muffled sound of a garment brushing against timbers, the sensation of someone pausing just behind them. Some visitors report seeing groups of figures, almost like a procession, men and women in clothing from the 1800s, sometimes carrying lanterns, move slowly across the bridge before fading into the mist. Others claim to hear muted conversation, the murmur of voices discussing tasks, counting steps, or exchanging instructions, as if the bridge itself is replaying the life of those who built and used it. There is an unsettling sense of continuity, of being in the presence of the past, as if the bridge preserves not only its structure, but the echoes of human life that once depended upon it. The Felton-covered bridge continues to captivate those drawn to its charm and its mysteries. Photographers, hikers, and paranormal enthusiasts make the journey through the redwoods to experience it firsthand. They speak of the beauty of the structure, the quiet majesty of the river below, and the serenity of the forest. Yet beneath the surface of this idyllic scene lies the haunting presence that has persisted for over a century, a reminder that the bridge is more than wood and nails. It is a vessel for memory, tragedy, and lingering spirits. A place where the line between the living and the past is blurred. For those who pause on the bridge during foggy mornings, the experience is often described as surreal. The mist softens the edges of the world, muffles sound, and creates a sense of suspension in time. In these moments, hikers sometimes glimpse ghostly figures, hear footsteps where none exist, or feel a subtle brush of unseen fabric. Whether it is the echoes of accidents, the presence of long-departed workers, or simply the power of imagination heightened by the misty landscape, the effect is undeniable. Deep in the remote forests of Humboldt County, California, the Lower Blackburn Grade Bridge spans the Van Dusen River as a silent testament to an era long past. Built decades ago to provide access across the rugged canyon, it served travelers and locals until 1985. When the road was officially abandoned due to safety concerns and structural deterioration. Since then, the bridge has remained untouched, overgrown with moss and creeping vegetation. Its concrete crumbling in places, yet still standing defiantly against time and the river below. Though it is no longer in use, those who venture near claim that the old bridge feels alive, a place where the past lingers and the night speaks in strange and unsettling ways. The Lower Blackburn Grade Bridge has long been associated with eerie phenomena. Travelers and hikers who explore the area at night describe a peculiar sensation as they approach. The air grows heavy, almost electric, and the silence of the forest is punctuated by sounds that seem out of place. Some hear soft whispers carried on the wind, words that vanish when one strains to listen. Others report footsteps echoing on the abandoned road or along the bridge itself. Though no one is visible, even the structure seems to groan and shift, producing low moans and subtle vibrations, as if acknowledging the presence of intruders in its long-neglected territory. Locals tell stories of the bridge's strange nocturnal activity. One longtime resident recalls hiking to the bridge with a group of friends in the late 1990s. They had come to explore the overgrown roadway and take photographs of the Van Dusen River, which flows quietly beneath the bridge. As they stepped onto the bridge's cracked concrete, they heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind them. At first, they assumed another hiker was nearby, but when they turned, the bridge was empty. The footsteps continued intermittently, echoing across the arches and along the old approach road. Terrified, the group hurried back down the trail, convinced that the bridge itself was watching them. Reports of whispering voices are equally common. Many who wander the area after sunset claim to hear words spoken softly, warnings, fragments of conversations, or names called out as if from a distance. Sometimes the voices seem to come from beneath the bridge, rising from the Van Dusen River's misty banks, while at other times they emanate from the road itself. One woman recounts driving near the bridge late at night and hearing a clear whisper of her own name. Startled, she stopped her car, but saw no one on the road or nearby. The wind was still, the forest silent, yet the sense of being observed remained. The bridge's haunted reputation is amplified by its isolation. The Lower Blackburn Grade Road winds through dense forests and steep hills, making it easy for travelers to feel cut off from the world. Cell service is unreliable, and the nearest homes are miles away. This remoteness has allowed the bridge's eerie qualities to persist without interruption. Visitors describe a strange duality. The road feels abandoned, yet it pulses with a sense of presence, as though the energy of past travelers and those who crossed it decades ago remains embedded in the concrete and asphalt. Some speculate that the bridge acts as a vessel, collecting echoes of the past and replaying them to those who venture close. Paranormal enthusiasts have investigated the site over the years, setting up cameras, recorders, and other equipment in an attempt to capture evidence of the supernatural. Many report inexplicable findings. Recordings sometimes pick up faint voices or whispers, too soft to understand, but undeniably human in tone. Cameras have captured flickers of light or shadows moving across the bridge, even in areas where nothing should have been. Hikers report sudden drops in temperature or the sensation of being lightly touched by unseen hands, often accompanied by the creaking and groaning of shifting concrete. These occurrences, though subtle, are consistent enough that local folklore has cemented the bridge as a hotspot for haunted experiences. There are stories that speak to the bridge's long history and the human drama that may contribute to its haunting. During the decades it was in use, the lower Blackburn Grade Road was notoriously dangerous. Steep grades, sharp curves, and narrow lanes led to frequent accidents, some of which proved fatal. Travelers navigating the bridge in fog or rain sometimes lost control, plunging into the canyon below. It is believed that the spirits of those lost in such tragedies may linger, replaying their final moments and leaving behind a faint but persistent imprint on the abandoned structure. The bridge is said to take on an especially unsettling character during foggy nights or after heavy rains. The mist rising from the Van Duzen River below seems to animate the arches and cracked concrete, creating shifting shadows that suggest movement where none exists. Hikers and explorers often describe the sensation that the bridge is breathing, the timbers and concrete suddenly shifting as though alive. Low groans, like the protest of a giant's joints, resonate from the structure when the wind passes through the canyon. The sounds are so precise and human-like that many swear they hear not just the bridge itself, but footsteps of the unseen and whispers of long-gone voices. Some visitors have reported seeing fleeting figures along the bridge, shadowy silhouettes that appear for a moment before dissolving into the fog. Others claim to glimpse faces in the cracks and crevices of the concrete, expressions of fear, sadness, or even silent screams. Photographers hoping to capture the river's beauty have inadvertently snapped images of inexplicable lights or shadows on the bridge, reinforcing the notion that it is far from abandoned in spirit. Those who linger too long often feel a compelling sense that the bridge is aware of their presence, that it watches silently from above the river, and that the echoes of those who passed it decades ago continue to roam its span. Despite the warnings, the lower Blackburn Grade Bridge continues to attract adventurers and thrill-seekers. Its remote beauty and storied history make it irresistible to photographers, hikers, and paranormal investigators alike. Crossing the bridge, even during daylight, carries a subtle tension, a feeling that the structure itself remembers the past. And when night falls, the old road seems to come alive. The whispers grow louder, footsteps echo across the worn concrete, and the groaning of the bridge blends with the rustle of the forest and the river's flow. In the quiet stretches of rural California, where country roads wind through hills, forests, and farmlands, the Dogwood Road overpasses stand as unassuming crossings, small structures where asphalt bridges span narrow lanes, their concrete arches and railings weathered by decades of sun, wind, and rain. By day, they are nothing more than ordinary pieces of infrastructure, part of the everyday landscape for locals commuting between towns or driving through scenic backroads. But by night, these overpasses take on a far darker persona. Stories circulate of ghostly hitchhikers, vanishing girls, and strange pending forms that appear and disappear without explanation. Travelers who pass beneath them after sunset often leave with a lingering sense that the roads themselves are alive, watching, and aware. The legends surrounding the Dogwood Road overpasses are numerous, each rooted in tragedy or mystery. One of the most common stories involves the figure of a young woman in white, often described as appearing at the roadside or standing just beyond the guardrails. She is said to extend her thumb, requesting a ride from passing motorists. Those who stop rarely see her fully enter the car. Many report feeling her presence in the back seat, a cold hand resting briefly on their shoulder, or a fleeting weight pressing against them, only to glance back and find the seat empty. Some claim that when they reach the point where she should have exited, she is gone entirely, leaving no trace but an unnatural chill and the faint scent of flowers in the air. Other tales describe groups of hitchhikers, figures that appear suddenly in the headlights, sometimes multiple people at once, dressed in clothing from decades past. When drivers slow to investigate, The figures vanish into the night, often in the blink of an eye. Some witnesses swear they see faces pressed to the overpass railings, pale and expressionless, staring down at the road as if pleading for help or warning travelers to continue without stopping. The effect is unnerving. The combination of a dimly lit road, the shadow of the overpass above, and the sudden, impossible apparition creates an intense sense of vulnerability. The overpasses themselves seem to carry memory. Concrete and steel, though inanimate, are said to record echoes of the human experiences that have passed beneath them. Car accidents, moments of violence, and the countless late-night drives of those traveling through the dark. Residents in the area recount stories of hearing faint voices along stretches of Dogwood Road, whispered names, cries for help, or fragments of conversations that dissolve into the wind. Occasionally, passing motorists report seeing movement in the shadows above them, figures leaning over the railings, or forms that seem to cling to the structure itself before melting into darkness. Perhaps the most unsettling accounts involve vanishing girls. These stories are particularly chilling because of their consistency across multiple overpasses. Drivers often describe seeing a young female figure walking along the roadside in the middle of nowhere. When approached, she will sometimes ask for a ride, nodding silently or pointing toward the overpass. Those who oblige frequently report a sudden, eerie silence inside the car, a sensation of cold pressing against them, or a fleeting glimpse of pale eyes in the rearview mirror. By the time they reach the next curve or junction, the girl has vanished completely, leaving behind only a cold draft or the subtle creak of a seatbelt, moving as if someone had been there moments before. Accounts of appending forms add another layer of mystery. These are shapes that seem attached to the environment, shadows that extend unnaturally from the overpass walls, wisps of fog that coil around vehicles, or ghostly silhouettes that appear just beyond the reach of headlights. Witnesses often describe these forms as almost sentient. They move in response to motion, vanish when observed directly, and sometimes seem to linger long enough to be noticed from multiple vantage points along the road. Some locals speculate that these forms are residual echoes of past tragedies, frozen in the night like imprints of lost moments, while others believe they are manifestations of restless spirits inhabiting the overpasses themselves. Despite the eerie tales, the Dogwood Road overpasses continue to draw a mix of thrill seekers, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers. The combination of isolation, winding roads, and the low hum of rural life creates the perfect environment for these stories to thrive. The overpasses, though structurally mundane, take on an almost cinematic quality under the moonlight. Headlights illuminate their arches. Fog drifts along the lanes, and shadows seem to dance in the corners of vision. Many who stop to observe or photograph the structures report that the experience is unlike anything encountered elsewhere, a subtle but undeniable sense that the past and present coexist in the same space. Historically, small rural overpasses like those along Dogwood Road were built during mid-20th century expansions of local infrastructure. They often carried light traffic and connected otherwise isolated communities, making them quiet and lonely by nightfall. This isolation is central to the legends. Drivers traveling alone on empty roads, surrounded by hills or forests, are particularly susceptible to perceiving movement, hearing unexplained sounds, or sensing a presence. Yet, even seasoned locals, those familiar with every curve of the road, admit that the overpasses have a peculiar energy after dark. The combination of tragic events, isolation, and natural phenomena seems to contribute to the haunting. Fog, wind through the trees, and the echo of passing cars create conditions that heighten awareness and fear. Yet for those who visit repeatedly, there is a strange allure. The overpasses become places of quiet fascination, where the line between legend and reality blurs. Footsteps, whispers, fleeting shadows, these occurrences are often subtle, but they are persistent enough to leave an impression that lingers long after the traveler has left the road behind. In many ways, the Dogwood Road overpasses are more than just structures of concrete and steel. They are repositories of memory and myth, holding the echoes of those who have passed beneath them. They are crossroads between the seen and unseen, the living and the departed, where ordinary roads become conduits for experiences that defy explanation. For those brave enough to traverse these dark, rural lanes, the overpasses offer more than a place to cross. They offer a glimpse into a hidden world where ghostly hitchhikers wait. Vanishing girls appear in the mist, and the forms appended to shadow and light remind all who pass that the night holds secrets few are prepared to understand. Stretching across the quiet suburban sprawl of Stockton, California, the East 8 Mile Road Bridge is an unassuming overpass by day, carrying traffic over a shallow channel with little fanfare. Its concrete arches and simple guardrails blend seamlessly into the urban landscape, nothing remarkable at first glance. Yet for decades, the bridge has earned a reputation among local drivers as one of Stockton's most haunted spots. Tales of a woman in white who appears along the roadway, then vanishes, have circulated for generations. Some even claim she can appear inside a moving vehicle, shifting from the back seat to the passenger side, leaving drivers shaken and questioning their own senses. The bridge has become synonymous with unexplained phenomena, a place where ordinary commutes transform into encounters with the unknown. Local lore suggests the woman in white is the spirit of a young woman who met an untimely death near the bridge decades ago. The details of her story vary depending on the teller, but a consistent theme emerges: a life cut short and an unresolved presence lingering on the bridge. Some say she died in a car accident on the overpass. Others claim she was pushed or leaped from the railing in a moment of despair. Regardless of the circumstances, her apparition has become a fixture of local ghost stories, an entity that appears on foggy nights, during late drives, or to those traveling alone after dark. Eyewitness accounts are chillingly consistent. Drivers often describe seeing a pale figure in a white dress standing near the bridge's guardrails, illuminated briefly by headlights or street lamps. She is motionless at first, as if waiting, her gaze fixed on the approaching vehicle. When motorists slow to observe, she sometimes steps aside or vanishes entirely, leaving behind a sensation of unease and a lingering chill in the air. Many describe the experience as immediate and visceral, as if the air itself has shifted, heavy with sorrow or longing. More disturbing are the stories of her entering vehicles. Some drivers report a sudden sense of presence in the back seat, a cold weight pressing against them, accompanied by the faint rustle of fabric or a whisper they cannot place. In some accounts, the apparition seems to move, sliding silently to the passenger seat, or appearing in a mirror's reflection where no one should be. The experience often leaves drivers paralyzed with fear or confusion, sometimes forcing them to pull over and sit trembling until the sensation fades. These encounters, though fleeting, are often described as tangible and real, more than a trick of imagination or fatigue. The bridge's haunting is not confined to a single phenomenon. Some have claimed to hear soft, desperate whispers, their meaning indistinct but laden with emotion, carried on the night air and fading abruptly as the vehicle passes. There are even tales of drivers feeling compelled to slow down, as if the bridge itself demands caution, not for structural safety but to respect the presence that lingers there. Historically, the East 8 Mile Road Bridge was constructed in the mid-20th century, part of Stockton's expanding roadway system. While it has served countless vehicles safely over the decades, it has also been the site of accidents, some minor, some tragic. Newspapers from the 1960s and 1970s occasionally report collisions along the overpass, though few make the connection to the spectral sightings that would later define the bridge's reputation. Oral history, however, preserves tales of sorrowful events, accidents, sudden deaths, and unexplained disappearances of travelers in the area. It is believed that these traumatic moments have imprinted themselves on the bridge, leaving echoes of grief and unrest that manifest as the woman in white. The appearance of the woman in white seems tied to specific conditions. She is most often reported at night, especially during foggy or rainy weather, when visibility is low and the road feels isolated. Drivers alone are more likely to see her, perhaps because heightened awareness and fear make perception more acute. or perhaps because the spirit prefers solitary witnesses. Many locals warn against stopping on the bridge at night, or even slowing too much, believing that hesitation increases the chance of a close encounter. Yet, despite these warnings, thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts continue to visit, drawn by curiosity and the hope of witnessing the unexplained. Some paranormal investigators suggest that the woman in white represents a residual haunting, a replay of her final moments, repeated endlessly on the bridge where her life ended. Others speculate that she may be sentient, aware of those who pass, capable of interacting with vehicles and drivers in fleeting but unmistakable ways. The consistency of the report's movement inside cars, shifting positions, palpable cold, supports the theory that the apparition is more than a trick of the mind. Witnesses often report a lingering impression of sadness, loss, or urgent need, as if she is trying to communicate or seek closure from the living. Over the years, the East 8 Mile Road Bridge has become more than just a site of fear. It has become a cultural landmark. Local storytellers, YouTubers, and ghost hunters have documented their experiences, perpetuating the bridge's reputation and preserving its stories for new generations. Drivers still report encounters, and residents pass the tales along, warning children and newcomers alike of the bridge's eerie reputation. For those who have experienced it firsthand, the encounter is unforgettable, a brief but intense intersection of the mundane and the supernatural. Some visitors speak of the bridge with a mixture of reverence and fear. They describe the sensation of crossing it at night as entering a threshold between the ordinary world and something more enigmatic. The road stretches ahead, dimly lit, with the arches looming above. Every shadow seems amplified, every movement on the road potentially more than it seems. And as headlights illuminate the bridge, the woman in white may appear, waiting silently, stepping into or out of sight, leaving behind only the memory of her presence and the sense that something unseen continues to watch the valley below. Scattered across the winding highways and rolling hills of California, small highway overpasses have earned a grim local nickname, the suicide overpasses. Unlike the large, famous bridges known for haunting legends, these modest concrete and steel structures seem ordinary at first glance. They carry little traffic, often spanning quiet country roads, creeks, or shallow ravines. Yet over decades, countless stories have attached themselves to these unassuming crossings. Local drivers, hikers, and night travelers speak of shadows that move in the periphery, unexplained cries echoing from beneath the arches, and apparitions that vanish before they can be fully seen. Though each overpass has its own unique geography and history, the recurring tales of sorrow, loss, and spectral presence create a chilling pattern that has made suicide overpasses a staple of roadside ghost lore. The origins of these legends are murky but often rooted in tragedy. Many overpasses, built during the mid-20th century to accommodate increasing traffic through rural and hilly areas, became sites of accidents and despair. Others were the scenes of intentional acts, with people choosing the overpasses as a final place to end their lives. Over time, these events have left an imprint in local memory and imagination, lending the structures an aura of unease that grows stronger after dark. Witnesses frequently describe encounters that begin subtly, a feeling of being watched as they approach the overpass, a sudden chill, or a faint sound that seems impossible on a deserted road. Some travelers speak of hearing soft cries for help, muffled sobs that seem to emanate from beneath the roadway or from the nearby slopes. Others report glimpses of figures at the edge of the bridge, sometimes a solitary person, sometimes multiple shapes that vanish when approached, leaving only the shadowed outline of the overpass itself against the night sky. The apparitions themselves are often described in consistent ways. A pale figure might appear standing at the railing, its features indistinct but its posture unmistakably human. Drivers occasionally report sudden appearances inside their vehicles, a shadow crossing the passenger seat or a cold pressure at their back, fleeting but undeniable. Some say these presences repeat patterns, moving along the road as if replaying moments from their lives, or stepping into the headlights, only to disappear when fully illuminated. Hikers passing under the overpass have described the sensation of a figure walking beside them, or a whisper in the wind that carries a name or a plea. Fog, rain, and mist amplify the eeriness of these overpasses. In the hills, low clouds can descend suddenly, reducing visibility and muffling sound. Under such conditions, the arches of the bridges seem to loom like gateways, their shadows stretching unnaturally across the pavement. Many witnesses describe the fog as almost tactile, wrapping around them and enhancing the impression of an unseen presence. Lights from passing cars create fleeting illusions, casting elongated shadows that appear to move independently of any physical source. Historical records sometimes corroborate the tragedies that fuel these tales. Local newspapers occasionally reported fatal accidents on small rural overpasses, and police logs mention cases of individuals who took their lives near these locations. Oral histories expand on the details, recounting stories of figures seen wandering the road, warnings whispered by earlier witnesses, and eerie, inexplicable sounds heard by those traveling alone at night. While skeptics dismiss these experiences as heightened imagination or tricks of light and shadow, the consistency of accounts, both across time and across different overpasses, suggests that something more than coincidence is at work. Among the most chilling reports are those of sounds emanating from beneath the bridges. Drivers passing underneath late at night sometimes hear sudden thuds, rustling, or footsteps on the overpass above, as if someone were pacing the span. These sounds vanish the instant the vehicle reaches the spot directly below, leaving the road silent and the driver questioning whether what they heard was real. Others have described hearing cries, a low wail of anguish, a whispered plea for help, coming from seemingly nowhere, fading into the night but leaving an unmistakable impression of sorrow. The overpasses are also said to affect the behavior of those who traverse them. Motorists describe a feeling of compulsion, a subtle pressure to slow down or avert their gaze, even if the road is clear. Hikers report a heightened awareness of their surroundings, a sense of vulnerability, and the instinct to cross quickly. Photographers who attempt nighttime shots sometimes capture anomalies, shadows in the fog, strange flickers of light, or faint ghostly figures in the frame. The recurring theme is one of liminality. The overpasses exist between ordinary roadways and the invisible realm of memory and spirit, serving as thresholds where the living momentarily sense what the departed left behind. These suicide overpasses share another common feature. They appear to retain echoes of the emotions that occurred there. Grief, despair, fear, and longing seem to linger in the air. Travelers describe heavy, almost tangible feelings pressing down as they approach, sensations of sorrow that are difficult to shake. Some theorize that the repeated tragedies imprinted the bridges with residual energy, which manifests in fleeting appearances, sounds, or sensations. Others suggest that certain spirits are aware of observers, using the overpasses to interact in small, fleeting ways, whether by moving shadows, whispering names, or creating a sudden chill inside a vehicle. Despite the fear associated with these structures, they continue to attract visitors. Paranormal enthusiasts, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers journey to these overpasses to experience their haunted reputation firsthand. Even those who do not actively seek ghosts often find themselves affected by the unusual atmosphere. The subtle groan of concrete and temperature shifts, the faint echo of footsteps on metal or asphalt, the soft murmur of voices in the wind. The bridges are simultaneously ordinary and uncanny. Everyday structures transformed by human tragedy and the stories that persist long after the events themselves. Rising above a narrow stretch of the eastern Sierra foothills, the Oakley View Bridge has long been a quiet landmark for travelers winding along the backroads between Bishop and Lone Pine, a simple span of concrete with low guardrails. It was built in the mid-1930s to provide a safe passage over a seasonal creek that swells during by day. The bridge blends seamlessly into the rugged landscape, desert scrub and granite outcrops stretching in all directions, the Sierra Nevada looming in the distance. But at night, local drivers insist the bridge becomes a stage for sorrowful echoes and ghostly phenomena, earning a reputation as one of the region's most haunted backroad crossings. According to local lore, the haunting of Oakley View Bridge began decades ago with a tragic lover's pact. In the early 1940s, a young couple, deeply in love but forbidden by family feud, would meet secretly near the bridge, hoping to escape together. One stormy night, they drove to the bridge in a borrowed car, intending to cross into the wider valley and start a new life. But as the rain-slicked road gave way beneath their tires, the car veered over the edge of the bridge into the shallow creek below. Both were killed instantly. Residents who arrived the next morning found the wrecked vehicle and the bodies tangled among the reeds. A tragedy that became the stuff of whispered conversation in nearby towns. Some say the pain and love of that night never left the site. Drivers traveling the Oakley View Bridge after dark describe an unnerving presence. The most common sighting is of a young woman in vintage attire, standing at the far edge of the bridge. She is often dressed in white or muted colors from the 1940s, and her face is obscured by shadow or by long hair. Some witnesses report that she silently reaches toward passing vehicles, as though begging for attention or requesting passage. Those who stop, either out of fear or compassion, often find the seat empty moments later, though a faint chill lingers in the air, and the scent of rain and damp earth fills the car. A few report seeing the man's figure as well, though less frequently, tall, stoic, with his hand extended as if waiting for someone to take it. The bridge is also notorious for more subtle phenomena. Headlights passing over the cracked concrete sometimes reveal flickers of movement that vanish when viewed directly. Hikers crossing nearby trails report hearing distant car engines revving, the unmistakable sound of tires skidding on wet pavement, though no vehicles are visible for miles. Others describe low, urgent whispers, like an argument frozen in time or a desperate plea for rescue. These sounds often fade as quickly as they appear, leaving a heavy silence that is both eerie and almost tactile. Locals insist that the bridge remembers that it has absorbed the fear, longing, and grief of that fatal night, and occasionally replayed them for those who wander too close after dark. One of the most chilling aspects of the Oakley View Bridge is the sense of interaction. Multiple eyewitnesses recount moments where the apparition seems aware of them. A driver might glance in the rearview mirror and see the woman leaning slightly forward, her gaze fixed and pleading. A hiker might feel a sudden touch on their shoulder, light but unmistakable, with no wind or companion present. Some paranormal investigators claim to have captured faint images on long-exposure night cameras, translucent figures hovering over the bridge railing, hands reaching toward the void, or misty forms appearing within the creek below. Others report unexplained temperature drops, sudden fog banks that appear and dissipate unnaturally, and the faint impression of being watched. The Oakley View Bridge also has a reputation among more adventurous thrill seekers. Teenagers and young adults from nearby towns often drive to the site, hoping to provoke a sighting. They report encounters that range from the unsettling to the terrifying. Headlights illuminating a figure only for it to vanish when the vehicle slows. A brief reflection of a face in the windshield that disappears when the driver glances directly, or the soft sound of laughter carried on the night air, mournful and hollow. Some claim that vehicles occasionally stall when the figures are near, only restarting once the bridge has been crossed, though skeptics attribute this to engine idiosyncrasies or uneven road conditions. Local historians have added a layer of realism to the tales. Archival records confirm that the bridge's early years saw numerous accidents, some minor, some fatal. During the 1940s and 1950s, the narrow roadway and heavy winter runoff made the area particularly dangerous. Several travelers, including families and loggers heading into the Sierra foothills, reportedly lost control of vehicles on slick stretches, contributing to the bridge's eerie reputation. While many stories of ghostly encounters are unverified, the combination of historical tragedy and isolated geography creates an environment ripe for legend. Fog and seasonal weather accentuate the haunting. In spring and early summer, snowmelt swells the creek below, creating a thin mist that rises and clings to the bridge's arches. Drivers report that the fog often thickens as they approach, muffling sound and distorting visibility. Shadows lengthen unnaturally, and headlights appear to reveal figures for a split second before they vanish. The low hum of the creek and distant wind through the nearby pines add to the sense of being caught in a space where reality and memory intertwine. Some claim the apparition is more active under these conditions, moving closer to the road or appearing inside vehicles that slow too much. Despite its remote location, the Oakley View Bridge continues to attract attention. Photographers, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers journey to the site in hopes of witnessing the apparitions. The bridge, though simple in construction, has become a cultural touchstone for the region, a place where history, legend, and supernatural speculation converge. Even during daylight, the faint outlines of older guardrails and worn concrete evoke the bridge's age and the many stories embedded in its structure. At night, however, it becomes a threshold, a crossing between past and present, between memory and the unknown. Nestled deep in the remote forests of Northern California, the Redwood Creek Bridge spans a narrow, fog-shrouded waterway that winds lazily through towering redwoods and dense undergrowth. By day, the bridge is a quiet, unassuming rural crossing, a simple wooden structure reinforced with steel beams, worn by decades of weather and occasional traffic from local loggers or hikers. But by night, the bridge takes on an unsettling reputation. Locals whisper of water spirits that reach from the creek below, of sudden chills that creep along the road, and of objects, flashlights, wheels, even vehicles, being tugged toward the creek by unseen forces. The Redwood Creek Bridge is a place where reality and folklore intertwine, where travelers are warned to drive carefully and to respect the river's shadows. The creek itself is a restless entity, fed by mountain streams, snowmelt, and heavy rainfall. It swells and retreats unpredictably, carrying fallen logs and debris that sometimes collect beneath the bridge. On foggy nights, the mist rising from the water coils around the wooden beams, giving the impression that the bridge floats in a cloud of gray vapor. It is in these conditions that most reports of supernatural phenomena occur. Witnesses describe the fog as unusually dense, almost sentient, moving along the roadway in swirls that seem to avoid or follow vehicles. Some claim that shapes appear within the mist, shadowy figures, or reaching hands that vanish. The instant headlights illuminate them fully. Locals tell of the creek's water spirits, beings said to inhabit the deeper sections of Redwood Creek and the banks surrounding it. According to legend, these entities are guardians of the forest and the water, but they can also be capricious and dangerous. Travelers crossing the bridge at night sometimes feel a tug at their vehicles, wheels caught as if snagged by invisible hands, brakes that momentarily lock or shift without reason, and flashlights swung from the bridge by unseen fingers. Some drivers report hearing faint laughter or whispering voices rising from the water, urging them to stop or to turn around. The effect is unnerving, creating the impression that the creek itself is alive, aware, and resentful of intrusion. Foot traffic and hikers have similar experiences. People walking along the bridge at dusk or after dark often speak of feeling a cold presence brushing against their backs, of soft ripples across the planks as if unseen feet are pacing alongside them. Some claim to have seen reflections in the water that do not match reality, ghostly faces staring up from the creek, the distorted shapes of trees, and silhouettes of people long vanished. One hiker recounted the experience of dropping his flashlight onto the bridge. Moments later, he heard it roll, as if tugged back toward the edge, but when he looked, nothing touched it. The sensation of being observed was so strong that he retreated, convinced the bridge and creek had their own will. The bridge's haunting reputation is compounded by its history. Built in the early 20th century to connect logging routes and rural homesteads, Redwood Creek Bridge has seen countless accidents. Vehicles have slipped off the slick wooden planks during rainstorms, plunging into the creek or becoming entangled with fallen logs. Over the years, stories circulated of travelers who never returned from the foggy forest roads, leading to speculation that the creek had claimed them. Some local legends speak of spirits bound to these accidents, trapped between the mist, and water, replaying their last moments, or reaching upward in warning to those who follow the same path. Seasonal weather intensifies the eerie atmosphere. Winter storms bring heavy rain that transforms the creek into a churning, turbulent river. Snow melt in spring adds sudden surges of water, and fallen logs drift against the wooden supports with a low, groaning thud. In these conditions, witnesses report the sensation that the bridge itself is moving or alive, vibrating subtly as if responding to the water's unrest. Many describe a feeling of dread that heightens their awareness, making every shadow and sound seem more significant. Travelers often slow as they cross, hearts racing, acutely aware of the water beneath and the legends that accompany it. Some of the most persistent accounts involve sudden appearances in the fog. Drivers have reported seeing figures walking along the bridge, sometimes children or women dressed in outdated clothing, who vanish instantly when approached. Hikers describe reaching the midpoint of the bridge and hearing whispers, splashes, or the scrape of metal, though nothing is visible below. Photographers attempting night shots occasionally capture strange anomalies, a misty hand reaching from the water, faint silhouettes hovering above the creek, or glowing eyes that vanish when the image is reviewed. Even those skeptical of the supernatural often leave with an uneasy sense that the bridge and creek are inhabited by something beyond the ordinary. The bridge is also said to have a peculiar effect on inanimate objects. Flashlights dropped, fishing gear left on the railing, and even unattended bicycles are rumored to move inexplicably or disappear entirely after contact with the bridge. Some witnesses believe that the water spirits are curious, testing boundaries, or attempting to communicate. Others interpret these occurrences as warnings, a reminder that the creek and forest are wild and not to be trifled with. Many travelers now cross the bridge cautiously, headlights illuminating the far edge, hands gripping the wheel tightly, and eyes scanning the fog for anything that should not be there. Despite the fear, Redwood Creek Bridge draws a mixture of thrill-seekers, paranormal enthusiasts, and nature lovers. Its remote location, surrounded by dense redwoods and uneven terrain, creates an environment where imagination and reality merge. During daylight, it is serene, a picturesque spot for photography or quiet reflection. But at night, the mist, the water's movement, and the history of accidents and disappearances combine to create a space steeped in suspense and mystery. Visitors often describe an almost magnetic pull, a sense that the bridge and creek want to be noticed, even if only fleetingly. Stretching across a quiet valley in Northern California, the abandoned rail bridge in Lake County stands as a stark reminder of a bygone era. Rusted steel beams and weathered wooden ties mark the path of rails that once carried locomotives and freight through the remote countryside. Today, the bridge is silent, isolated, and partially reclaimed by nature. Grass and weeds grow through cracks in the planks, and the surrounding creek meanders beneath, reflecting the bridge's skeletal frame in its slow-moving waters. Yet despite its abandonment, locals whisper that the bridge is far from empty. Ghost trains are said to pass in the dead of night, lanterns swing without wind, and the echo of phantom footsteps follows any who dare cross its creaking span. The bridge was built in the late 1800s to serve the booming timber and mining towns scattered across Lake County. Rail lines connected small settlements, some of which now exist only in memory. Their decaying structures hidden among overgrown streets and collapsing foundations, the bridge became a vital artery for transporting lumber, ore, and passengers, linking ghost towns like Glenhaven and Whispering Pines. But as mining operations closed and timber mills shuttered, rail traffic dwindled. The line was officially abandoned in the mid-20th century, leaving the bridge as a silent sentinel over the valley, a monument to industry and loss. It is along this bridge that most reports of paranormal activity occur. Drivers passing nearby at night speak of distant train whistles that rise and fall without warning. The sound is unmistakable, a low, mournful cry echoing off the hills, yet no train ever arrives. Hikers and local explorers have reported the rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails, the unmistakable vibration and sound of a locomotive moving, only to find the rails empty. Some insist that the phantom trains appear in moments of heavy fog, traveling slowly across the bridge as if carrying unseen passengers to towns long vanished. Lanterns are another recurring element of the bridge's legend. In the mist that often settles over the valley at night, glowing lights seem to swing back and forth above the rails. Witnesses describe them as old-fashioned oil lanterns, suspended in mid-air or held by figures too dimly lit to identify. Some say these lights are the ghosts of railway workers checking the tracks, their tasks repeated endlessly, long after death. Others suggest they are the wandering spirits of passengers trapped in transit, unable to reach destinations that no longer exist. Whatever the case, the lanterns move independently, swaying even when there is no breeze, disappearing when approached, leaving a faint smell of smoke or oil lingering in the cold night air. Footsteps are perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the haunting. Explorers crossing the bridge after dusk report hearing planks creak under unseen weight, rhythmic steps echoing along the structure. Some describe a sense of being followed, a presence walking alongside them that mirrors their pace. When they turn, the bridge is empty, yet the sounds continue for moments before fading into silence. On particularly foggy nights, these steps sometimes intensify, accompanied by indistinct voices, murmurs, and sometimes faint laughter. The combination of sound, shadow, and the desolate surroundings creates a palpable tension, leaving witnesses feeling watched long after leaving the site. The ghost towns connected to the rail line add context to these stories. Glen Haven, once a thriving timber town, is now reduced to a few crumbling structures. Whispering Pines, known for its short-lived mining boom, has been entirely reclaimed by the forest. Both towns feed into the bridge's mythology. Locals tell stories of workers who died during the construction or operation of the line, of miners and loggers who met sudden, tragic ends, and of travelers who vanished between stops. Some claim that the spirits of these individuals linger along the rails, repeating their last actions, walking the paths they once knew, carrying lanterns, and tending to trains that no longer exist. Fog and weather play a crucial role in these encounters. The Lake County Valley is often shrouded in mist, particularly in the spring and fall. The fog creates the perfect stage for apparitions. Shadows stretch across the bridge, lights shimmer in the vapor, and sounds are amplified or distorted. Visitors often describe a sense of unreality as they approach, a quiet that seems unnatural, broken only by the sudden sound of a train whistle or the soft thump of footsteps on the planks. The combination of visual distortion and auditory illusions makes the bridge a liminal space, a threshold between the present and echoes of the past. Occasionally, explorers report the feeling of movement underfoot, a subtle vibration along the bridge that mimics the passage of a train. Others speak of glimpsing figures at the far end, only to have them vanish when approached. Some photographers have captured fleeting images of shadowy forms along the rails, indistinct shapes, appearing just beyond the bridge, supports, or reflecting in the creek below. Paranormal enthusiasts believe these are residual hauntings, the imprints of lives once intertwined with the railroad, frozen in time, yet reaching forward to the living. Despite the eerie reputation, the bridge continues to draw visitors. Hikers, photographers, and ghost hunters come in search of the supernatural, while local lore ensures that even casual travelers approach the crossing with caution after dusk. Daylight reveals the bridge's architectural simplicity, the rusted metal and weathered wood, but nightfall transforms it into a corridor of memory, shadow, and unexplained phenomena. Witnesses describe a tension that lingers even after leaving, the sensation that the bridge watches, that footsteps might resume behind them, or that lanterns may still sway in the unseen fog. Rising above a narrow canyon in the rugged Sierra Nevada foothills, the Sierra Crossing Bridge is an unassuming span of concrete and steel, carrying a two-lane road over a small, turbulent creek. By day, it seems like any other rural bridge, a functional connector between winding mountain roads. But locals know it differently. The bridge has long been associated with sudden storms, strange weather patterns, and unexplainable phenomena. Drivers and hikers passing the area frequently report that clouds and heavy rain appear almost instantly as they approach, as if the bridge itself summons the storm. Shadows, figures, and movement along the span often precede these weather changes, lending the site an eerie reputation that has persisted for generations. The bridge was built in the early 1940s, intended to replace a dangerous ford that had claimed lives during periods of heavy rainfall. Over the decades, the Sierra Crossing Bridge has witnessed its share of accidents, from vehicles skidding off wet surfaces to hikers swept by the creek's sudden surge. Over time, a narrative developed among locals. The bridge is not merely a crossing, but a liminal space where nature and the unknown converge. Witnesses speak of seeing shadowy forms walking along the span, often shortly before a storm erupts. These shadows are rarely fully discernible, sometimes human-shaped, sometimes more abstract, but their presence is consistently reported, and always just before weather changes dramatically. Drivers often describe a peculiar sensation as they approach. The air grows heavy, the light dims, and a faint chill spreads through the car. Some report glimpsing figures along the guardrails, as if pacing or waiting for them. Headlights may catch a shadow gliding along the bridge, or a faint reflection that disappears when directly observed. Within minutes, dark clouds gather overhead, and rain begins to fall in sheets. Locals have begun to associate these appearances with a warning, a signal that the creek below is swelling or that the canyon roads will become treacherous. Hikers crossing the bridge on foot have similar experiences. Many recount stepping onto the wooden or concrete planks and immediately feeling a presence beside them, as if someone unseen is walking alongside. Footsteps, sometimes echoing louder than one would expect, seem to match their pace, and soft rustling or murmurs ride the wind. When they look to see the source, nothing is visible, yet the feeling of being observed remains strong. Moments later, a sudden storm may break, lightning flashing through the canyon and rain turning the pathway slick and dangerous. Witnesses insist the sequence is too consistent to be coincidence, and over time, the Sierra Crossing Bridge has become a focal point for tales of nature as sudden fury intertwined with supernatural oversight. The shadows are not always benign. Some travelers describe them as restless or urgent, moving quickly along the span or appearing near vehicles on the bridge. A few have reported glimpses of figures leaning over the guardrail, as if peering into the torrent below, only to vanish when approached. Hikers report similar experiences, sometimes seeing indistinct forms crossing the bridge in the fog or mist that rises before rain. These apparitions are rarely aggressive, but their sudden appearance can be terrifying, especially as storms often follow immediately, turning the quiet crossing into a perilous scene. Local lore provides various explanations for the bridge's phenomena. Some believe that spirits of those lost in past accidents haunt the structure, warning travelers of danger before nature itself becomes perilous. Others speculate that the area is a geographic nexus, where atmospheric and psychic energies converge, allowing shadowy forms to manifest in moments of heightened tension. A few elders in nearby communities recount tales of ancient travelers, long before the bridge existed, who vanished in flash floods, leaving behind restless echoes imprinted on the location. The stories vary, but a common thread persists. The bridge is a place where the living brush against the unseen, where shadows precede storms, and where caution is both literal and spiritual. Weather patterns in the Sierra Crossing area amplify the bridge's eerie reputation. The canyon acts like a funnel, concentrating sudden cloudbursts and heavy rainfall. Witnesses describe the suddenness with which storms appear, sometimes within minutes, often accompanied by wind that rattles vehicles or shakes hikers' clothing. Locals advise caution even on clear days, noting that the bridge's microclimate can change without warning. It is during these moments, when clouds descend rapidly and visibility drops, that the shadow sightings are most frequent. Drivers report figures appearing in fog or rain, pausing on the railings or moving along the span, vanishing when approached. Photographers attempting long exposure shots have occasionally captured blurred shapes that seem to walk along the bridge, shapes that cannot be attributed to wildlife or passing vehicles. Some of the most unsettling reports involve interactions with the shadows. Travelers have reported feeling subtle touches on their vehicles or backpacks, a light brushing along the arm, or the sensation of a presence close behind as they cross. Hikers describe a sudden tightening of the air, a pressure that feels almost like breath on their necks, or a chill that spreads from the feet upward. In nearly all cases, these encounters are immediately followed by rapid weather changes, gusts of wind, sudden downpours, or distant thunder that seems unnaturally close. It is as though the bridge itself commands the environment, using these shadowed forms as heralds of impending storms. Despite, or perhaps because of its reputation, the Sierra Crossing Bridge attracts curiosity seekers, hikers, and paranormal enthusiasts. During daylight, the structure appears mundane, surrounded by scrub, granite outcrops, and tall pines. Yet nightfall, or heavy fog, transforms the scene. Shadows lengthen, planks creak, and the canyon seems alive with unseen motion. Visitors often leave with the lingering impression that the bridge has observed them, that the sudden storms and shadowy figures are warnings meant to be heeded, and that the passage is as much a test of attention as it is a physical crossing. Ultimately, the Sierra Crossing Bridge is more than a simple span of concrete over a creek. It is a threshold, a point where the forces of nature, human memory, and the supernatural converge. Travelers report leaving the area with a mix of awe and unease, haunted not only by the shadowy figures they glimpsed, but by the sudden storms and the sense that the bridge itself watches over its domain. It endures as a place where legends thrive, a site where every crossing carries the possibility of encountering something beyond the ordinary, and where the unpredictable fury of the Sierra Nevada reminds all who pass that some spans connect more than just 2 points on a map. They connect the living with the mysteries that linger just beyond perception. Spanning a narrow bend of the twisting Coyote Creek in rural Northern California, the Coyote Creek Bridge is a modest structure, unremarkable by day yet infamous by night. A simple concrete span with steel guardrails. It carries a quiet country road that winds through rolling hills, dense woods, and open fields. Locals have long whispered about the bridge's unsettling atmosphere after dark, claiming that it is a place where the natural and supernatural collide. Night drivers frequently report hearing eerie howls echoing across the creek, glimpsing sudden flashes of red eyes along the guardrails, and feeling an almost palpable sense of being watched. Over time, these stories have solidified the bridge's reputation as a haunted crossing, one to be approached with caution, especially after dusk. The origin of the Coyote Creek Bridge's haunting is tangled with both folklore and tragedy. According to local tales, the area was once home to a small settlement, abandoned decades ago when the logging and ranching operations that sustained it failed. Stories tell of travelers, ranch hands, and hunters who disappeared while crossing the bridge or wandering the surrounding hills at night. Some say the creek itself has a restless spirit, while others claim that the animals who died along its banks, coyotes, dogs, and other wildlife left behind echoes that linger, especially under the veil of darkness. Regardless of the explanation, those who venture near the bridge after nightfall often describe experiences that are impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence. One of the most common phenomena reported is the howling. Drivers passing the bridge on late-night trips frequently hear sharp, mournful cries that seem to rise from the wooded banks along the creek. At first, the sound may seem distant, almost like coyotes calling to one another. But the closer a vehicle approaches, the louder and more urgent the howls become. Some witnesses describe the calls as impossibly close, sounding just behind or beside their car, even when no animals are visible. Occasionally, the howls are accompanied by rustling along the guardrails or sudden movements in the periphery of headlights, as if something is stalking or pacing the bridge. The red eyes, seen along the guardrails, are another chilling element. Multiple drivers and hikers have reported catching fleeting glimmers of crimson light just above the bridge's steel rails. The eyes appear briefly, as though peering directly at those crossing, then vanish when looked at directly or approached. Sometimes, several sets of eyes are visible at once, forming a line along the span, while other times they seem to leap from one side to the other in impossible movements. Witnesses often describe an instinctive fear, the sense that they are being assessed or observed by entities that exist outside the natural world. Footsteps and shadows are also commonly described. Travelers on foot report hearing planks creak and low, shuffling steps echoing along the bridge, though the wooden sections are solid and no one else is visible. Some hikers claim to feel a presence at their side, brushing lightly against them or keeping pace with them as they cross. Shadows sometimes appear in the fog or moonlight, elongated and distorted, vanishing the moment someone turns to confront them. The combination of auditory, visual, and physical sensations makes crossing Coyote Creek Bridge at night a deeply unnerving experience. Many locals approach with caution, aware that the dense surrounding woods, the creek below, and the steep embankments combine to heighten both the natural dangers and the perception of paranormal activity. Sudden fog often rolls in off the creek, thickening within moments and muffling sound, which amplifies every rustle, whistle, or movement along the bridge. In this mist, the reported howls and red-eyed glances become even more terrifying, seeming to surround travelers on all sides. Some of the most persistent accounts involve interaction. Drivers report that the howls sometimes change pitch or rhythm depending on their speed or actions on the bridge, almost as if the unseen entities are responding to them. Hikers speak of the eyes seeming to track them, following their movement until they reach the opposite end of the span, then vanishing instantly. On rare occasions, witnesses have claimed to feel a light touch on the car or shoulder, a sensation fleeting but unmistakable, as though the spirits soar, whatever lurks along the bridge, which to make themselves known without causing harm. Local lore offers a number of explanations. Some suggest the bridge is haunted by the restless spirits of animals or humans who perished along the creek. Others believe that the red eyes are not entities at all, but manifestations of the human mind reacting to danger signals in low light, though the consistency of reports makes this less satisfying for those who have crossed it themselves. A more poetic theory holds that the bridge lies at a threshold, a place where natural and supernatural energies intersect, where the spirits of the forest creek and wildlife linger in subtle forms to remind the living of the fragility of life. Despite its eerie reputation, Coyote Creek Bridge continues to attract curiosity seekers, hikers, and paranormal enthusiasts. The combination of isolation, dense woods, and reported hauntings creates a compelling environment for those drawn to the mysterious. Photographers arrive hoping to capture a glimpse of the red eyes. Hikers come to feel the chill of an unseen presence, and drivers test their nerves against the legend of the howling, even for those who do not actively seek the supernatural. Crossing the bridge at night leaves a lingering impression, a sense that the world is larger, stranger, and more unpredictable than it appears by daylight. The bridge is, in many ways, a convergence point for natural danger and human imagination. The creek's currents are swift during seasonal rains. Fallen logs shift and scrape along the supports, and the surrounding forest is home to coyotes and other nocturnal animals. These elements alone might make the bridge unnerving, but the recurring reports of red eyes, howls, and shadows elevate it into legend. Each crossing is a reminder that even a modest rural bridge can harbor mysteries that the landscape itself remembers, and that those who venture into the night may encounter the echoes of the past or the unseen guardians of the creek. Rising over a quiet stretch of marshland in Marin County, just north of the Golden Gate's bustling sprawl, the old Marin Bridge has long been a fixture of local lore. Unlike the iconic steel and suspension bridges that dominate the area, this span is modest, a wooden structure reinforced with time-worn beams, carrying a narrow lane over a slow, winding creek. By day, the bridge appears innocuous. The planks creak under the weight of passing vehicles. Gulls circle overhead, and reeds sway gently along the banks. But after sunset, the bridge transforms into a place of whispered mystery, where fog rolls in from the bay and local legends of spirits and voices come alive. For decades, residents have spoken of fog spirits appearing under the spans, their voices carried across the water, sending chills to anyone crossing after dark. The bridge was built in the early 1900s to connect small communities scattered across Marin's marshlands. Over the years, it served farmers, fishermen, and travelers making their way toward the burgeoning city beyond the hills. Time and weather have taken their toll, leaving the bridge's wooden beams warped, the guardrails splintered, and planks sometimes missing or loose. It is this age and isolation that contributes to its reputation, for even minor sounds, creaking wood, rustling reeds, or the splash of a fish can, take on an eerie, human quality when the fog rolls in thick from the bay. Locals warn that the bridge is not merely old, it is alive with memory, with echoes of those who crossed it long ago and perhaps never left. Night travelers frequently report strange occurrences. The most common are the fog spirits themselves, said to appear beneath the bridge in the early hours of darkness. Witnesses describe them as shadowy, shifting forms, their edges blurred like mist, rising from the water and vanishing when illuminated by headlights. Some claim to have seen faintly humanoid shapes, standing on submerged planks, their faces obscured, watching silently. Others report a sensation of being observed, a cold pressure on their chest or shoulders, as if the bridge itself is aware of their presence. When these apparitions appear, they are often accompanied by whispers, soft and indistinct, drifting across the water. Words are rarely clear, but the tone is unmistakable. A call, a warning, or perhaps a simple acknowledgement that the living have crossed into the realm of the unseen. The phenomenon is especially intense during periods of fog or high humidity, when the marshland seems to merge with the sky and water, creating a dreamlike, otherworldly environment. Drivers have described approaching the bridge under a gray veil of fog, only to suddenly hear voices rising from beneath the planks, low and hushed but unmistakable. Some have stopped mid-crossing, straining to make out the words, only for the voices to vanish with the first gust of wind. Others report glimpsing forms that appear to step along the water's surface, walking in slow, deliberate patterns before dissolving into mist. Photographers attempting long exposure shots often capture faint blurs or glowing shapes that do not correspond to vehicles, wildlife, or reflections, feeding the lore that the bridge is haunted not just by memory, but by conscious spirits. Footsteps and subtle movements on the bridge itself are another common occurrence. Even on nights when no other travelers are present, hikers or drivers sometimes hear the planks creak under invisible weight. Some describe a rhythmic pacing, a slow shuffling that mirrors their own movements. Occasionally, the sounds quicken or lag, creating the unnerving impression of a presence keeping time alongside them. A few witnesses have reported that stopping on the bridge can intensify the sensation. A whisper right at the ear, a brush of cold air, or a momentary reflection in the creek that shows a figure not standing on the road, but in the fog beneath. The bridge's reputation is reinforced by local history. Archival records indicate that several accidents occurred along the creek during the early 20th century. Horses and wagons toppled into the water, vehicles slipped off the narrow lane, and occasional drownings were recorded. Some residents claim these tragedies left residual energy in the structure, binding spirits to the bridge and the surrounding marshland. Others suggest the fog itself acts as a medium, allowing apparitions to emerge from memory and interact with the living. In either case, the bridge is a focal point for stories passed down through generations, a place where folklore and geography intersect to produce persistent, unexplained experiences. Encounters are not limited to auditory or visual phenomena. Some travelers describe subtle tactile sensations. The steering wheel vibrates as if brushed by unseen hands. A cold gust passes through the cabin without wind, or the bridge planks underfoot feel unusually damp and heavy. Hikers report feeling a presence moving alongside them, though turning around reveals nothing. Occasionally, lights appear beneath the bridge, small glows resembling lanterns or fireflies, but they move independently, darting and hovering as if guiding or observing. In all cases, these experiences evoke a sense of caution, respect, and sometimes outright fear, reinforcing the bridge's reputation as a supernatural threshold. Despite, or perhaps because of its eerie allure, the Old Marin Bridge attracts both curiosity seekers and those drawn to the paranormal. Photographers come hoping to capture misty apparitions. Hikers seek the thrill of unexplained footsteps, and paranormal enthusiasts gather in small groups to witness the fog spirits firsthand. Even those skeptical of the supernatural find themselves unnerved by the combination of isolation, creaking timbers, and the thick, rolling fog. The bridge becomes more than a crossing. It is a place of tension and anticipation, where the ordinary rules of sound, sight, and time feel suspended. Stretching across the barren, sandy expanses of the Mojave Desert. The Mojave River bridges are unremarkable by day simple concrete spans carrying a highway over the dry riverbed, or its occasional seasonal flows. Yet by night, these bridges transform into places of eerie vision and whispered legend. The combination of isolation, heat-baked landscape, and the haunting quiet of the desert makes the bridges an unsettling passage for anyone daring to cross after dark. The history of the Mojave River bridges is tied to the region's challenging terrain. Built in the early 20th century to carry traffic across the intermittent river and floodplain, the bridges have endured flash floods, shifting sand, and the harsh desert sun. Over the decades, they have witnessed accidents, breakdowns, and the occasional tragedy. Vehicles that have slipped off the edge, overturned in sudden desert storms, or caught fire have become part of the local lore. Travelers say the desert does not forget, and at night, when the heat dissipates and a stillness settles over the sands, the bridges seem to replay the echoes of those events. The most frequently reported phenomenon is the mirage of accidents. Drivers describe approaching a bridge under the moonlight or the sparse glow of distant highways, only to see vehicles scattered across the span as if frozen in mid-crash. Some appear flipped, others resting against guardrails, with headlights casting spectral glows into the darkness. When approached, the illusions vanish, leaving nothing but empty asphalt and the dry wind. Spectral vehicles are another common sight. Desert travelers report seeing parked trucks, sedans, and old motorcycles on the bridges, their forms hazy and flickering, sometimes as if viewed through heat distortion. The vehicles appear in positions that suggest sudden stops or abandoned moments, headlights dimly lit, sometimes blinking, sometimes entirely dark. Some motorists claim these ghostly cars seem aware, turning slightly as if tracking their movement, then vanishing when drawn too close. The experience can be unnerving, particularly for those already tense from navigating dark desert roads. Figures accompanying these phantom vehicles are also described in multiple accounts. Shadowy silhouettes are seen standing beside or inside the spectral cars, often motionless or frozen in gestures of alarm or despair. Some witnesses report the figures raising arms, pointing, or appearing to look directly at the approaching driver, only to vanish when fully illuminated by headlights. Hikers and nocturnal explorers report glimpses of shapes moving across the bridges in peripheral vision, always fleeting, always gone, when directly observed. These apparitions are rarely threatening, but their presence evokes a sense of being observed by something outside the natural world, a sentinel of memory, or a replay of tragedy. The desert environment amplifies these encounters. Nightfall in the Mojave is sudden, the temperature dropping sharply as shadows lengthen across sand dunes and dry riverbeds. The sparse ambient light creates optical illusions, and the vast emptiness magnifies every small movement or sound. Heat mirages lingering from the day can distort perception, making ordinary roadside objects appear as forms or shapes in motion. Locals insist, however, that what occurs on the Mojave River bridges goes beyond typical mirages. The consistency of reports over decades, from truckers, travelers, and hikers alike, lends weight to the notion that some force, memory, or residual energy manifests in this desolate stretch of the desert. Sounds accompany the visions in many reports. Some drivers claim to hear screeching tires, muffled cries, or the low groan of metal bending even when the bridges are empty. Others describe faint engine noises, revving, or the hiss of hydraulic brakes, often coinciding with the appearance of the ghostly vehicles. Some hikers say that crossing the bridge produces the echo of footsteps on empty asphalt, or the soft shuffle of tires against gravel, though no living person is present. These auditory phenomena intensify the surreal atmosphere, creating a sensory layering that makes the desert night feel alive with memory. Witnesses often describe the events as cyclical. Drivers report that some scenes are repeated in near-identical fashion on different nights, while others experience slight variations. A car facing one direction, a figure leaning differently, a light flickering in another position. The repetition has led locals to believe that the Mojave River bridges are more than simple infrastructure. They are a canvas on which time and tragedy play themselves out, a place where past events echo into the present. Despite the unsettling nature of the sightings, the bridges continue to attract travelers, photographers, and paranormal enthusiasts. For many, the desert is a place of wonder, and the bridges serve as both a scenic crossing and a location steeped in legend. Visitors who approach after dark often do so with caution, headlights illuminating every inch of the roadway, cameras at the ready, and a heightened awareness of the night air. Many report leaving with an enduring impression that the desert itself is watching, that the spectral vehicles and figures exist in a liminal space between memory and reality, and that the Mojave River bridges serve as a threshold where the ordinary rules of time and perception are suspended. Rising over a dry, rocky gulch in the remote reaches of Northern California, the bridges near abandoned mining camps carry more than just the weight of rusted steel and weathered timber. They carry echoes of a bygone era. Constructed during the height of the gold rush in the mid-1800s, these structures once connected bustling camps of prospectors, merchants, and laborers who flocked to the Sierra Nevada foothills in search of fortune. Today, the wooden planks are rotted, the iron bolts rusted, and the railings lean under decades of neglect. Yet despite their dilapidated state, the bridges remain a locus of haunting activity. Locals and explorers report eerie phenomena after dark. Miners, spirits wandering the spans, swinging lanterns that illuminate nothing but mist, and the faint sounds of hammering, shouting, and distant footsteps, as though the camps themselves never truly abandoned the area. During the gold rush, these bridges were critical arteries for the flow of people, ore, and supplies. Miners crossed daily with pickaxes, pans, and sacks of gold-laden gravel, moving between claims and settlements that have long since disappeared. In the harsh, unforgiving terrain, accidents were common. Men fell into the gulches below, wooden bridges collapsed under overloaded wagons, and fires consumed cabins and equipment. These deaths, sudden and often violent, are said to have left residual energy embedded in the structures. Travelers today describe a palpable sense of presence on the bridges. A weight that seems to press down as if unseen workers are still pacing the planks, inspecting the rails, or carrying out forgotten tasks. The most frequently reported phenomenon is the appearance of ghostly miners. Witnesses describe shadowy figures dressed in period clothing, wide-brimmed hats, suspenders, and boots coated in dust. These forms often linger along the railings, crouching as if examining the water or creek bed below, or pacing slowly across the bridge. Some appear to carry lanterns that cast a faint, swinging glow, illuminating the misty outlines of the broken timbers and abandoned mining tools strewn along the ground. The lanterns move with purpose, bobbing and swinging as though carried by unseen hands, casting long, distorted shadows that stretch into the night. Observers insist that no light sources exist in the area to explain these phenomena. Yet the illumination is vivid enough to outline the planks and faint silhouettes. Accompanying these apparitions are the sounds of the past. Explorers crossing the bridges at night often report hearing the rhythmic clink of pickaxes striking rock, the metallic ring of tools dropped onto wooden beams, and muffled voices shouting in coordination or frustration. Footsteps echo on the wooden planks in patterns that suggest multiple individuals moving at once, and yet, when turned to confront them, the bridge is empty. Occasionally, the sound of wagon wheels rolling or chains rattling along the rails is reported. A haunting reminder that these crossings once carried heavy loads of ore and equipment. The auditory manifestations are sometimes synchronized with visual sightings, as if the past is replaying itself for any who dare witness it. The bridges themselves contribute to the atmosphere. Many of the structures are elevated over deep gulches or seasonal streams, their supports creaking under weight and age. Wind rushing through the gaps produces a low moan, which some say merges with the ghostly sounds of miners working. Fog often settles in the valleys during cooler months, wrapping the spans in a soft haze that enhances the ethereal quality of lights and figures. Hikers report that visibility can change abruptly. A clear night may suddenly be blanketed in mist, and it is in these moments that the swinging lanterns and shadowed miners are most frequently seen. The combination of weather, isolation, and history transforms the bridges into a theater of memory, where the actions of the living and the dead seem to converge. Stories passed down by locals add context to the phenomena. One tale tells of a miner who fell into a gulch while carrying a lantern full of gold dust, the lantern swinging wildly as he fell, leaving an imprint that is said to appear nightly on the bridge. Another recounts a group of men who perished in a sudden storm while transporting ore, their shadows replaying their desperate crossing. Lanterns swaying and tools clattering in the wind. While some of these stories may be legend, the consistency of eyewitness accounts over decades lends them a haunting credibility. Many agree that the bridge serves as a liminal space, a threshold between the present and the echoes of the past, where the tragedies and labors of miners are never fully extinguished. Visitors often describe an unsettling sense of time distortion. A brief pause on the bridge may stretch into minutes or longer, and shadows seem to move independently, sometimes rushing ahead, sometimes lagging behind. Lanterns appear and vanish without explanation, and figures vanish when approached. The bridge exudes a quiet tension, a sensation that one is intruding on the private affairs of spirits who continue to toil, guarding lost treasures or fulfilling unfinished tasks. Even those skeptical of the supernatural leave with an awareness that the bridge is different, a place where the weight of history manifests tangibly in air, sound, and light. Some explorers attempt to document the hauntings. Long exposure photographs occasionally capture swinging lanterns or faint silhouettes, blurred against the decaying wood and misty background. Recordings sometimes reveal unexplained sounds, metal striking wood, whispers, or footsteps that cannot be accounted for. Paranormal enthusiasts have gathered in small groups, reporting similar experiences of cold drafts, sudden light flickers, and shadowy forms pacing alongside them. Across the decades, the Mojave Desert and Sierra foothills alike have yielded countless stories of haunted mining camps, but the bridges connecting these settlements remain some of the most consistently reported locations for unexplained activity. Deep in Northern California, tucked along a winding backroad, the Redwood Timber Bridge stretches over a narrow creek, framed by towering redwoods whose trunks blot out sunlight even in midday. By day, it is a serene, almost picturesque crossing, moss-covered beams, weathered planks, and a constant murmur of water flowing beneath. Yet by night, the bridge becomes something else entirely. Locals and hikers speak of an unsettling presence along the span, figures that seem to merge with the redwoods themselves, their forms partially visible in low light, flickering like shadows caught between two worlds. The forest around the bridge is dense, isolating the crossing and amplifying every sound: the creak of timber, the rustle of leaves, and the soft murmur of unseen movement. The bridge is old, built in the early 1900s to carry logging equipment and supplies through the dense redwood forests. Timber from the surrounding groves was used to construct the supports and planks, giving the bridge a deep, earthy scent that lingers long after a vehicle or hiker passes. Its remote location, combined with frequent fog and low-light conditions, has made it a site for whispered stories of hauntings and spectral sightings. The dense canopy often casts shadows across the roadway, creating illusions that blur the line between the natural and the supernatural. Over time, these illusions have grown into persistent legends, giving the bridge a reputation that keeps casual travelers wary after sunset. Most commonly reported are ghostly figures among the trees near the bridge. Witnesses describe silhouettes that resemble human forms, sometimes standing on the bridge, other times drifting through the surrounding forest. These figures often appear partially transparent, blending with the redwood's dark trunks and the shadows of the night. Some hikers swear they have glimpsed faces etched with sorrow or concentration, only to vanish when viewed directly. Others claim that figures emerge from the mist, moving along the bridge as if continuing the labors of an age-long past, before dissolving into the fog once more. The bridge's wooden beams seem to amplify these sightings, creating moments where the forest and the structure appear intertwined with these specters. In addition to the visual phenomena, the bridge is known for its eerie auditory experiences. Visitors often report faint footsteps echoing across the planks, though no other traveler is present. Some describe the sound of someone pacing or moving alongside them, the rhythm of the footsteps perfectly synchronized with their own. Others report whispers, indistinct murmurs carried on the breeze, sometimes calling names, sometimes issuing warnings, and occasionally forming what seems like faint instructions or commands. The dense forest amplifies these sounds, giving them an almost tangible presence, as though the surrounding redwoods themselves are resonating with echoes of past lives. The origins of the hauntings are tied to the bridge's history. During its construction and early use, several accidents were recorded. Workers fell from the planks, caught by the high beams, or dropped into the creek below, while others succumbed to illness or exhaustion while hauling timber. The forest, too, was perilous. Timber slides, hidden ravines, and sudden storms claimed lives that were often never recovered. Local folklore suggests that these individuals did not leave the area, their spirits bound to the forest and the bridge where they toiled and perished. Over the decades, the stories have grown more elaborate, describing workers still appearing at night, carrying tools, inspecting planks, or tending to tasks that are long obsolete. One particularly chilling account involves a hiker who crossed a bridge late in autumn. As fog crept in from the creek, he saw a cluster of figures standing among the trees, appearing as if they were part of the bridge itself. Their forms shifted with the mist, lanterns flickering faintly in their hands. When he paused, the figures seemed to move closer, merging into the bridge's timber and the surrounding redwoods. In the space of moments, the vision vanished, leaving only the soft sound of the creek and the wind through the canopy. Many have reported similar encounters, the sensation that the bridge is inhabited, watched, or maintained by unseen hands. In some instances, the specters appear almost playful. Hikers have recounted glimpses of figures darting along the planks or peering from behind tree trunks, vanishing as they approach. Others describe seeing shapes that seem to mimic their own movements, a silent reflection of themselves projected onto the forest and bridge. These experiences, while not overtly threatening, carry an intense emotional weight. Observers often describe an immediate sense of awe or unease, as though they have crossed into a space where the boundary between past and present, living and dead, is porous. The Redwood Timber Bridge also has a reputation for time distortion. Travelers sometimes report that what feels like minutes on the bridge stretches into longer periods, or that shadows appear and disappear in ways inconsistent with the movement of light and wind. Photographers and videographers attempting night shots frequently capture unexplained blurs or faint humanoid shapes, blending into the timber and surrounding forest. Even when no figure is seen, the combination of low light, dense trees, and ambient sounds creates a hauntingly vivid sense of presence. Ultimately, the Redwood Timber Bridge exists as a crossing point in both a physical and metaphysical sense. Its planks bear the weight of vehicles and pedestrians, but also the residual echoes of a long history of labor, accident, and loss. The forest surrounding it, thick with redwoods, fog, and shadow, merges seamlessly with the bridge to form an environment where ordinary perception is challenged. Specters emerge from the trees, their forms sometimes distinct, sometimes merging with timber and foliage, reminding all who pass that this place is more than a simple crossing. It is a living monument to memory, time, and the unseen world that lingers just beyond the edge of light. Bridges, in their quiet geometry of arches and spans, do more than unite banks and roads. They hold memory, the last footsteps, the heartbreak, the leap, the waiting figure in moonlight. Tonight, we cross 25 haunted crossings across California, each one a sentinel of sorrow, a threshold to the past. If you ever find yourself driving under a bridge at midnight, listen for the soft steps behind you. If you glimpse a face in the fog, don't stare too long. And if a sorrowful whisper begs you to stay, remember, some crossings are not meant to be revisited. Until the next rumor turns into a ghost, until the next arch trembles under unseen footfalls, stay cautious, stay curious, and keep your heart just a little light in the darkness. Thank you for walking this haunted road with me. May your bridges be safe and your nights free of shadows.